Council members, let's get started. It's me and you. Blaze up there.
Somewhere in the packet is an article about Green Bay off of years. Terrible to me for the materials and about pressure issues.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Unless it may I just don't know or something.
Welcome to the August 7th, 2018 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. We begin the meeting tonight with the invocation led by Pastor Dave Arnold from Saddleback Church. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you so much for the opportunity to openly express some of the most fundamental granted rights under the Constitution to pray for the city and for each of you tonight. We're truly blessed to be part of a city that allows this. Please join me in prayer. Dear God, we come before you tonight as a city who seeks your support. We humbly ask you to lead us and guide us. You instructed us in 1 Timothy 2 that petitions, prayers, and intercessions and thanksgiving should be made for all people, for kings and for those in authority, and that we may live in peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. So tonight, for Mayor Dr. Jim Gardner, Mayor Pro Tem Lee Basil, Council Member Scott Voights, Council Member Dwight Robinson, and Council Member Thomas Calgary, we ask for wisdom and strength. Please lead them in the decision-making and their leadership of our community. Please give these leaders wisdom and guidance in every decision that they make. Give them peace and confidence. Protect them, bless them, protect their health, bless them, their families, and their finances, Lord. For each and every member of the city staff, God be with them and bless them as they serve our community. And particularly tonight, I lift up the men and women who are on the fire line, protecting other communities. And just be with them, Lord. May God continue to richly bless the citizens of the city of Lake Forest. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Next we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight, do we have any scouts in the audience? No. So tonight we'll be led by Councilman Scott Voights.
Let us rise to salute the greatest symbol of freedom in the world. Thank you, Dave Arnold, for your involvement in our city. We're blessed to have such a great place of worship. You know, worship centers in cities are a part of a healthy city, so thank you for being here. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is a report from the closed session. Elizabeth, do we have any reports from the closed session?
There's no reportable action.
Okay. There's never any reportable action from the closed. I wonder what the hell goes on there, that we never have any reported action. It's a secret. That's why it's closed in the first place. Okay. Moving right along. We've reached the public comment section of the agenda. As a reminder, if you would like to participate, please fill out a blue speaker card, turn it into the city clerk, and your name will be called. Oh, by the way, and welcome Facebook people, and they will be called. First we do the live audience, and then we'll do the Facebook people with the public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. When you're called to speak, you will see 3 lights, the first one being green. When you have 30 seconds left, the light will turn to yellow, and that means you should speed up. And when your time has expired, the light will turn to red. At that time, your public comment period has ended, and the council requests that you conclude your comments and save any further general comments for a future meeting. Madam Clerk, have we had any requests to speak?
Yes, Your Honor. Gloria Knowles, followed by Monica Leback.
Hi.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me have a chance to speak. I represent my family, my two children, who are 13 and 15, and we live in Mountain View, near Mountain View Park. And we are coming in just regards to the tennis court there. We are not able to join any of the Lake Forest country clubs because we're out of that jurisdiction. We don't have an association, so but the tennis courts, as per the photos that we took, are getting in really bad condition, and the gates are hanging off, and the metal's coming all off the walls. There's huge cracks, and it's just really sad looking. We've been in Lake Forest for 9 years. This court means a world to us. It's our one place that we can go play without having to get in the car and drive somewhere. Most associations have locks now on their tennis courts. The high school is too far for us to go. So this place, we take a lot of pride in the great revamping you guys did of Mountain View Park, and we just feel like we don't want this to get forgotten, so that people around there still are encouraged to play tennis and everything. So thank you for your time, but hopefully, I don't know if this is in your list already of repairs to be made. So that's just wanted you guys to know, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, a real quick question. Now, this is Mountain View tennis courts?
Correct.
That's not the quality we usually expect in Lake Forest, so thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we'll give that to Scott. Okay. All right, we're passing that on to the parks people, and get back to us in a month if they haven't done anything. Okay?
Just real quick, we're talking about CIP projects tonight. It's one of the agenda items. Is this part one of those where we're talking about sports facility resurfacing, or?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yes. It's already approved. It's in the works, and we'll make sure we contact her and let her know what's in the works and what else we can do out there.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, welcome.
Hello. Item 11A is going to highly impact 11B. Let me just start out with that. Earlier today, I sent an email to council as well as some staff members, and police services. First, let me apologize. I was so distressed, still feeling like I'm going to stroke out here, standing here. When I wrote that email, I missed the fact that Outlook auto-corrected a word in that email, the word semen. Please note that the correct use of the word in conjunction with this email is with bodily fluid, not service personnel. I'd like to read an excerpt from my email for council record. What other streets have been permitted within the city that have gone through as much as Bennett Ranch has gone through in the last 3 years? What other streets can say that half of their neighborhood is permitted while the other half is not? What other neighborhood can say they are surrounded by complexes who have taken the law into their own hands and enacted a fee to park on their own property? What other neighborhood can speak to the damage done to their community and then have to cover the costs associated with that damage? What other neighborhood in this city can brag that they have found condoms full of semen on their streets? What other community is plagued by graffiti, which was done by rivaling gang members, as were given to you in earlier pictures today, that has occurred since yesterday? Now, I only have 3 minutes to talk, so I'd like to limit my the responses I'm going to ask here to 15 seconds. So, Councilman Voights, I ask you to answer in less than 15 seconds, what would be your remedy if this problem existed for you and your children? Let's pretend you have an 8-year-old daughter.
Neighborhood watch.
We have Neighborhood Watch.
Well, I think call 911 then, because the fact is that needs to be reported. It's ridiculous what you're having done in your neighborhood.
Okay, so how about Councilman Robinson? You have an 8-year-old daughter, semen full of condoms.
Excuse me, I'm in the midst of eating.
Don't take that away from my time, folks.
Sorry. Same response. I mean, I think that something like that, the 911 should be called, the police should be out responding to that.
Okay, and how about Councilman Cagley? What's your response?
I would agree with both of, excuse me, with my two colleagues. I don't understand how it's not being picked up and reported already, frankly.
I don't understand how it's even happening, how we in the city of Lake Forest allow this to happen. And nobody is doing anything. Tonight, I get the feeling that we are being pushed off to the Traffic Commission. We've been standing in front of you for 3 years. At the last meeting, Councilman Basile had, hopefully I'm saying that right, sorry, Leo, Basil. Okay, she said that she wanted to address this issue at this meeting.
Time is up.
Thank you.
John Bush, followed by Melinda Wolfe.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, character counts. And I want to expose the lack of character of some of the sitting council members tonight. I want to verify, first of all, that there is an ongoing district attorney investigation into the Andrew Hamilton recall of 2017. There is an ongoing investigation which began with my report to the city clerk of forgeries on the declaration portion of the petitions. No paid circulators or coordinators were involved. Any forgeries were done after I turned the signatures over to Mr. Adam Nick, who then had possession along with Mayor Jim Gardner and Larissa Clark. The number of signatures affected was not great enough to change the outcome of the recall, and that is why the recall went through as it did. But that in no way closed any investigation. After 2 complete 8-hour days with the investigators, far more information surfaced and the investigation grew. I can only say at this point, I have spoken to the investigators recently, and the investigation is not only ongoing, but has grown to the point it will take time not expected, along with people being involved that were not expected to be included in this investigation. So you see why I can't expand too much on this right now. But I mention this because the connection of the sitting council members' connection to the investigation. Mayor Gardner, who is a big Adam Nick fan and friend, according to his own words on social media, and the connection of Adam Nick to Leah Basil, where he paid for her campaign in 2016 and also paid for the anti-Robinson campaign at the same time, which I'm the person he paid. That's how I know he paid them. Adam Nick also paid a great deal of money to support Tom Cagley for the replacement of Andrew Hamilton. This is all very important because Adam Nick has such corrupt intentions and connections in this city. We already know he attempted to fix the council to get a $1.5 million award from the city, which I have exposed, and I'm sure now will not come to the council. He's very close with many people here supporting Gardner, Cagley, and Basil, and that alone is very scary. Nick is also closely associated with Francis Agave, a convicted felon now serving 10 years in Arizona for bank fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering. She's also responsible for Adam Nick's wife getting the signatures needed to have her run for assembly in the 69th district. That's how close they're connected. When the city council members are supported by these people, it makes me wonder just how corrupt they really are sitting here. Other people involved with Adam Nick and closely associated in this city, Martin Henderson, Larissa Clark, Josh Fiskay, and Terry Wyatt. Once again, ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
character counts.
Time's up. Thank you.
Melinda
Thank you.
Wolfe, followed by Bob Holtzclaw.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Melinda Wolfe. I'm a currently retired school teacher. I brought my friend Harriet Kelly, who is my neighbor. I apologize if you can't hear me. The smoke has been bothering me. She's going to help me. I'm visually impaired. The reason why I'm here is I live on Lavaca Street in Lake Forest, homeowner since 1996. I love Lake Forest, but I'm currently frustrated. I sent out a petition in the neighborhood for permit parking, and we had 71% rather than the 75 required of people, of course, parking in our neighborhood that don't belong there. We're dealing with, same as other neighborhoods, I'm sure, I've heard today already, alcohol, drug use in the cars, condoms in the street where children play, broken glass. It's dangerous. I'm blind. There are cars going up and down my street. Hard to find a parking place for my friends or my Bible study group that comes every week. They can't find, the drivers come. Access drivers cannot park in front of my house to pick me up, to take me places I need to go. I'm desperate. I would like some help. We have other concerns. Our car was hit. Lots of neighbors have told me that their cars have been wrecked and then the drivers just disappear. There's something called drunk parking, I found out, in my neighborhood, where people just dump their cars. We have vehicles from businesses just left in my neighborhood. It is sad that I have to lock my door and be afraid to go out and cross the street for fear of being hit by a car. This is my guy, Doug Braxton. And he protects me every day, but I hate putting him in jeopardy and myself. And please reconsider the 75% required. I passed out the letter sent from the Traffic Commission, but the 75% is ridiculous. There is no possible way that can be in law, and we need to change it. And I will do everything I can. I'm a retired school teacher with nothing else to do but to help my neighbors and make my community a better place. And I implore that you take our requests and pleads. Otherwise, we'll all leave, and you'll be stuck with a terrible situation. People that are coming in my neighborhood don't even live in the cigar apartments. They're from across El Toro. There are businesses dropping off their vehicles. There are construction vehicles blocking Harriet's driveway. She can't get out. This is pathetic. We have retired individuals in our neighborhood and several disabled individuals that are struggling with this. And you know what they tell me? Good luck. They'll never do anything. And that can't be. God bless you, and thank you for your consideration today. I don't know if I have more time. Do you have any questions for me?
I was just in your neighborhood.
Who are you? Where are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Right in front of you, Jim Gardner.
Thank you.
All right. I was just in your neighborhood about 2 weeks ago. The folks on Kavanaugh
Yes.
are setting up a neighborhood watch there, and they had about 12 or 13 people, and that's pretty much right around the corner
It is.
from you. And if you talk with the police, they can help you set up a neighborhood watch for your neighborhood as well.
Okay, I have to tell you, when I call the police, they don't show up. 3 hours later, they'll come, and I'm under my bed on my guard dog, afraid I'm going to be shot because I hear gunshots almost weekly, not to mention the illegal fireworks. So I'm a little disappointed that we don't have a force that will come out when you call. I'm sorry, I'm just telling the truth. Are there any other questions for me? Have you looked at the paperwork I sent around?
I'm sorry, there's only one copy, so we can
I understand
provide it to
that.
them.
I didn't know how many people would be here today.
Sure.
I didn't know if you could pass it around, because then you'll kind of remember me better and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we just set up a new traffic and parking commission. They meet this month.
Is that forward? Thank you.
Yes, again,
Thank you,
straight
sir.
ahead. That new parking and traffic commission is meeting the fourth Thursday of this month, and then monthly thereafter, and you can ask them to review the previous findings.
Okay. And so is there a contact or an email address? Could I be emailed? It's just
Yeah,
difficult?
did you leave your email
I
address
did,
here?
I did.
Is that on the form?
On the form I completed to
The
speak?
thing that just, okay. Yes. All right, I'll send it to you. Jennifer, get that to me, and I'll send you the contact information.
Thank you. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Bob Holtzclaw, followed by Elliot Horowitz.
By the way, just a general tip to everybody, if you have a paper like this, which you want the council to see, it usually pays to send that in early. Usually, if you send it in by the Thursday before the meeting, we get that in a packet so we can review it. It's usually pretty tough for us to listen to you and to read a paper at the same time. So if you want to, that's the best way to get information to us. The city clerk sends that to us. Sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Oh, all right. Hi, Bob Holtzclaw. I'm the city-appointed vector control person. First, I would like to report on the bees that attacked that lady near Ridge Route. Yes, they were Africanized bees. I took some of the bees to vector control, and they say most of the bees in Orange County are Africanized. The thing is if they swarm around your house, usually they'll just keep on going after they'll just move on. If they don't, call a beekeeper, but do not try to remove the bees yourself. It'll be a big mistake. I'd like to read, here's this report I usually download from Vector Control, and this is concerning the city. We've had 7 contacts for mosquitoes, 12 for rats, which we have a bigger problem with, swimming pools, and this is also jacuzzis and things like this. 99 pools we had to treat in this city alone. This is way high. For underground treatment, 375. This is storm drains and whatever. Some of these things can be actually prevented if we really work on it. Next year, our property tax will be going up under vector control. Wow, I think I got everybody's attention now. So, yeah, we've got to do something about this. One thing I've been working on with the HOA, if my Lake 2 representatives, there's Sonny Morper and Jim Riker right there, who are on the board. We got a tractor to go down in that storm drain that leads underneath Toledo, and they plowed under a trench there to relieve some of that water that was 4 feet deep. Now it's about 4 or 5 inches there, and there's still water there, and it needs to be taken care of. What's happened here is on Toledo, the sprinkler system wets the sidewalk, goes down the gutter. It wraps around eucalyptus right there, and then there's another set of sprinklers that sprinkles an area about 2 feet, and you can't, the water just runs down into the storm drain, runs down there, and the water cannot absorb into the ground. It's always soaking wet there. Plus, one other thing we've noticed, that there's a water sprinkler system on top of the fence on that one corner house. And it doesn't water his property, it waters the bank out on the down the slope. So, what can you do? I hope, we can get together, work on this, to cut that water down, and I hope we can, finally figure out what we can do here, because I have to hire somebody to go down there and spray it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm wondering, to City Manager, can we add that information at the next HOA meeting that we have with all the HOAs? That would be helpful, because we're not going to get anything done unless we have their cooperation.
Good idea.
Elliot Horowitz, followed by Vincent Burke.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. My name is Elliot Horowitz. I'm a 30-year resident of Lake Forest, and I'd just like to make a quick comment about the Nikasi Nursery. I saw recently where there's a plan in the works to build 800 new houses on that property when it's sold, and I just think that's too much. I think the plan said there would be 5 brand new neighborhoods, and we're kind of looking at a city that's already impacted in several ways. The traffic on Lake Forest and Bake is bad and getting worse. Our schools are overcrowded. And I think that we need to kind of slow down a little bit and take a look and see if we want that much development going on that piece of property. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Vincent Burke.
Welcome.
Thank you. Vincent Burke, Lake Forest. Does the city have the technology, the equipment to deal with the graffiti issue? My neighborhood over on Cherry has been tagged since the weekend with tagging, crossover tagging occurring. Are there any cameras, surveillance systems that can be used, mobile, temporary, placed across the street, wide angle, narrow angle, on these specific areas that do get hit by tagging and on subsequent nights get re-tagged over? You may not catch the guys who did it the first time, but you will get video of the folks who do the crossover tagging. It's the surest way to start nabbing these guys and making them and their parents pay and pay and pay for this nonsense. All right? If we have the technology, even if we don't, let's invest in it. Let's do it. If you need a homeowner, a condo owner to host the equipment with their power outlet, I'm sure they'd be happy to. Or you can use battery power, whatever it takes. But let's start getting innovative about dealing with this tagging issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Actually, we're right now undergoing discussions to do that kind of a thing. The remote wireless kinds of cameras, the chief and I months ago costed that kind of system out that was too prohibitive, and we're now talking about systems that would cooperate with local homeowners, and we're trying to figure out what are the legal ramifications of having this kind of a setup. But so we are working on it. It is a serious problem, and I don't understand. Monica also sent us some pictures. We've almost always been very quick. People compliment us how quickly we get rid of that. Somehow, the last couple of days, we're falling down. Chief's not here tonight. I will talk to him tomorrow about that. Usually the reports I get from people are thankful how fast we got it up, and somehow this week we're not doing the kind of job we expect us to do. So thanks for your comment. Yes,
If I might make one comment here. We've talked about cameras before in city parks and things of that nature, and one of the challenges with government is the retention of video and the cost that it takes. So it's just a challenge that we face in government that individuals don't. But if an individual put up a camera and chose to share that information with the police department, that might be a lot easier and significantly cheaper than the city trying to do it. When we try to put up a camera, it can cost tens of thousands of dollars, even though, as we've talked before, the camera might only cost a couple of $100s. It's just what government has to do from a document retention standpoint that makes it really challenging. So just a little piece of advice there.
No, that's a great idea. Let me ask the city attorney, just could we, in association with the neighborhood watches, right? So we set those up and people go out and they work really well. Could we donate or put as a part or an incentive to somebody doing a neighborhood watch a camera system? Is that something that the city's legally entitled to do?
Well, we'd have to look into it. There would be two issues. One, is it a gift of public funds? Arguably not, but we have to look into it. There's a public benefit to that sort of camera or facility being available to the public, and the police could use it, things like that. So I think we could probably make an argument not. The second issue would be the retention issue. If it's something that's within our control, then we would have to make sure that those records are retained for a certain period of time. So they're both issues we could look into if the council desired.
Yeah, I believe he's right. I have one of those systems, and it's really cheap for me as a person. So maybe instead of us trying, which we're going to continue to try to do it through the city, but that might be an alternate way and much more effective, less costly, et cetera. So do you need consensus from us to look into that? No, you can't, because we can't do it from public comment, but we could later in our regular comments say it, yeah. We're not allowed to do, just what that little fumble was about, we're not allowed legally to take action based on something that's said during the public comment meeting, so we can't take action on that now. But later tonight, one of us, probably Councilman Robinson, can in fact, in our closing council comments, make that recommendation, and then we could put it on the agenda to be discussed next time. So that was kind of punting it, but we legally prohibited from following up immediately, as I was trying to do. Okay. Next.
Nothing further from the public, but perhaps Facebook.
Okay, Facebook Live. And thank you, folks on Facebook Live. You know, we are the only city in the United States that actually allows our citizens to participate through Facebook Live. And that's really exciting. And some nights we have more people on Facebook than we actually do here live in the audience. So anyhow, we're ready for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Nick Wilson, comment for council. At multiple meetings, the citizens of Lake Forest were told that there was no DA investigation into the recent recall. We now know that the city has been aware of the investigation for months. The citizens of the city deserve to know the truth and why we were misled for so long.
All I can say, personally, I'm unaware of any investigation, so I'm still unaware of any investigation. So.
And we have one, Diana Peltier, comment for council. The parking issue in Bennett Ranch has become untenable, with multiple non-residents parking along Cherry Avenue, Bennett, Brookhaven, and other streets on the northeast side of Cherry Park. We live on Green Hill near Aliso Creek Trail, and we have seen residents from the apartment complex across the creek jump over our locked fence in the morning to walk to their vehicles. We have seen trash, beer bottles, large work vehicles parked near the corner of Crestbook and Cherry. We have seen an increase in graffiti, noise, and auto break-ins this past summer. We need permit parking.
Yeah, thank you. Generally speaking, the public comment, this part is designed for items that aren't on the agenda. Permit parking, and particularly for Bennett Ranch, is coming up later, so we'll take that into account. It really wasn't a question, but yeah, we understand. Permit parking, by the way, in the last couple of years, we've had 16 applications. 5 of them have been approved. So about a third of them get approved. And parking's a problem all over the city. Every time we approve one area for permit parking, the adjacent areas ultimately come back. So it's a really complex problem. We'll be talking about that later. Any more questions from Facebook?
That's it, sir.
Okay. All right, moving along to the regular part of the agenda. We're up to the consent calendar, the warrant register, item number 4. Do we have anyone from the public who wants to pull an item?
No, Your Honor.
Council members?
I'll move.
I'll second that.
Okay, please vote.
Briefly, I just want to recuse myself on some items pertaining to Serrano Creek Park, just with proximity to my house. So other than that, I'll vote on the rest of it.
Okay, let's vote, please.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Now the consent calendar miscellaneous. These are items 5 through 10. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Have there been any requests to remove an item from the public?
No, Your Honor.
Council?
Move item miscellaneous consent 5 through 10.
Well, wait, did anybody want to pull any?
Yeah, I'd like to pull numbers 7 and 10 first.
7 and 10. Okay, then do I have a motion
I made a motion.
for the remainder? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, please vote. Scott, it's yours.
Okay, sorry about that.
Scott's thing hasn't...
That motion carries unanimously.
Item 7, pulled by Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, on number 7, there are several legislative matters that we've been opposing and supporting, and one that I would actually like to add to our letter of opposition would be AB 1668, and that is the water rationing that just came through. The Assembly passed it maybe a month or two ago, and what it's going to end up doing is by the year, I think, 2020, they're going to limit to every person in a household per capita 55 gallons of water per day. That's a shower. I mean, a shower and a half a load of laundry. I think that that's the wrong way to approach this. I think instead of it being water restrictions for the end user, I think they need to focus more on water infrastructure, because we lose hundreds of millions of gallons of water because of improper water storage. So I would like us to oppose AB 1668 in lieu of proper water management protocols.
Okay. That's not already on the agenda. So, City Attorney, can we add that under that item?
You can. Legislative matters is on the agenda, so it's a piece of pending legislation.
Okay. So that's your motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
This is just on this one item.
Yeah, just the one item.
Yep.
Okay, so to vote on that item.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now let's vote on the entire...
Well, with the rest of it, I was going to pull it myself, so I think they're all bad bills that we've opposed or been watching, and they've got a little bit better through amendments, but I still don't want to change the opinion that we had previously. They're still just bad bills in my mind. Some just erode local control. There's a few bills here, but I just want to leave it where we had it previously, just continue to oppose or watch the bills that we had and not change our platform or our decision on those bills. So I'm just going to move that, well, I guess we don't have to do anything with the item. We can just stay where we're at. So I'll just move that we continue as is.
Actually, I think we did change our position. Was it on AB 1912, the one for the Joint Powers Authority and pension liabilities? It went from opposing that bill, and they've made some small amendments to it, and I think we changed it to support. I'd still like to oppose that bill.
Yeah, we would just need a motion to stay with our previous positions.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we stay with our previous positions on all those bills.
Yeah.
Have a second? Okay. Let's vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
I have an update on AB 488, I think it is. It's the bill to create the Joint Powers Authority for the Housing Trust. And Councilman Voights and I were at a meeting yesterday.
We were.
Where they were talking about it, and it passed through the Senate, I think, this morning, unopposed, and is moving forward. Just for your information, that's a model in which what they're trying to do is to have Orange County lobby for funds so that we can get funds here in the city to do more affordable housing and more permanent supportive housing for homeless people. So that's...
I think it includes mental health, too.
Oh, yes, and mental health. Yeah, it's quite an omnibus bill. The problem has been in the past that Orange County, we're 85,000 people. We don't compete well for that against Los Angeles and San Diego and bigger cities. So this bill will pool all the cities in Orange County together and pull the money in from Orange County and then distribute it to the city. So it sounds like it should be very positive, and it is moving forward. We'll keep you apprised on that, because that impacts... We don't have enough affordable housing. We have more than is required by the state, but anybody who's out there knows that there's not enough. So that will be very important to us to be able to tap into those funds. Okay, then we're now on to number 10, that's right. Number 10, pulled by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this one up because in the CIP improvement project, I just met with city staff yesterday at Saddleback Ranch Road. There's a section on Saddleback Ranch Road that we were going to be moving the storm drain, and I had asked Public Works to kind of look into possible costs for allowing for more blacktop in that little teeny narrow at Millwood and Saddleback Ranch Road, because on that decline, it's very difficult for cyclists to get down that area safely. Oh, yeah, there you go. There's pictures right there. Thank you. Yeah, so I'd like to have more blacktop at this little area, but I'd also like the City Council to maybe consider moving back the curb just 6 inches to a foot close away, further out, giving a little bit more space for those cyclists. And I wouldn't ask this, except this particular area, you can't tell by the picture, but this is a really steep decline, and there are a lot of people that are on bicycles going down this road that, maybe they're not as, professional riders, and it's very difficult at high speeds to go down that area safely. And with that, on the right, you can't see it from the image, but that's a pretty high curb, so you can't get very close to the curb without hitting your pedal, and then you've just bit it. So I would like the council to maybe consider allowing Public Works to do some additional research to see how much money that would cost to just widen that little strip area just a little bit, as long as it doesn't impact the sight lines for people turning off the Millwood Street, which you can see over at the far right hand of that picture. So would that be something the council might consider, allowing Public Works to come back and give us some ideas of how much money that would cost?
Yeah, it's something I would consider, but we had designs for that road. This is before you were on the council, if you remember.
I was part of that focus group.
No, I understand.
And I didn't like this then.
I understand. We had to throw that out, and then we rebuilt the road, and now we're rebuilding it again. And I just hate, and what are we going to do in 2 years from now? So how can we do a better job so we're not constantly adding on to something we've already done? So I'm not in favor of just going ahead and doing something, but I would be in favor of an overall look to see what really has to be done. Because I hate spending that extra money. We waste $30,000 here, we waste $20,000 there, we waste, et cetera. So it really needs not just to look at that, but if they're going to look at the whole thing, and hopefully that's all. But I'd hate to go ahead and just do this little bit and find out later that little bit should have been done. So my preference would be something a little more comprehensive rather than just this little corner. I don't know, anybody else?
Yeah, Public Works, actually, as I look at that, you've got the curb, then you've got the gutter. The gutter actually extends farther out as you go towards. Why is that? Usually, it's when you're pouring concrete, we have the forms.
The storm drain.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. So thank you. We were able to meet yesterday, so we did throw together some quick costs without doing any engineering or anything like that. And if, Doug, if you want to drive, or Jonathan can. So go back one just to get a perspective. So that's the project site that we're talking about. It's the first bulb out at Millwood going down, and we were able to look at that. If you go to the first option that we looked at, so after we're meeting, we're trying to, the idea is you've got the asphalt pavement, which the riders would prefer to be on. The concrete goes out there. It's a local depression is what we call it. So that's where the gutter dips down to capture the water to send it into the catch basin.
There's a drain along there?
That is a catch basin, and if you see at the far end,
oh, I see it.
That's a manhole that's inside that gutter. So that's kind of a control point. So one of the things we looked at as a first option would be getting a grinder out there, removing the concrete from the red end, kind of grinding out the excess width, if you will. That would give you 3 feet of asphalt. It'd still give you a 5-foot bike lane. It'd be 3 feet of asphalt. We could just grind out that part, pave over it, smooth out the pavement. So that would be a cheaper, quicker alternative. We keep the manhole in place because that's another structure that you have to deal with. So that's kind of the first option. It'd be the cheapest one. We'd still have to make sure we can actually do it, but that was kind of a rough estimate based on our conversation yesterday. The second option, option 2, would be go ahead and widen that out to 4 feet of AC, which is generally what a biker would prefer, a minimum width for pavement. Keep a 1-foot gutter. Because you got to move it over there, we'd have to abandon that catch basin in place. We'd build a new one upstream, and then you could get rid of the manhole cover there. So that gives you your 3 feet of asphalt there for about $40,000 to $50,000.
I just want to add in this discussion what you're mentioning. When we had the really bad rains about a year ago, because it's such a steep decline and that bulb out comes out at an angle, comes down, the water wasn't even draining in that catch basin. It was literally shooting across the road and hitting the inside island. So people were hydroplaning all the way down a steep decline. It was mayhem.
Really intense rain. Yeah.
Yes, so that storm drain, no matter what, we have to move that storm drain. It's dangerous in that location. It should never have been there. It should have been further up on the road. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's fine. And then the third option would be let's move the curb and gutter back a foot or two. That would give you 6 feet of asphalt. Some real challenges with that design. We've got a water line right behind that catch basin under the curb. So some challenges there. A lot more money. You're going to redo that whole median there, the ADA ramp. And the other thing to really look at, which you brought up, was that bulb out is designed so that people on Millwood can stick their nose out farther right and look down. As you remove that, speeds increase, cars can start cutting over. That was kind of the reason why we have it designed the way it is. And then we can certainly go back and look at it again. It's going to cost upwards of $100,000 plus. And again, these were rough estimates that we were just trying to put together to give kind of a magnitude of the issue and be able to give the council some ideas of what to do and what to look at. So that's really kind of options that you might want to weigh. We could try the cheaper one, see if it works. Go incrementally larger, do nothing, do it all. It's really council prerogative. As far as staff's concerned, it was designed, it meets standards. We can always look at changing those.
I get a question. Is that sidewalk go the length of the street right there? Is that Saddleback we're talking about?
Correct.
So before I got injured, I cycled a lot. I used to do triathlons, and I had a mountain bike and a road bike. And I used to ride Saddleback Ranch Road just as a training circuit. And I think that the guys that are good riders will ride the street, but with the sidewalk there, anybody that is my wife would ride on the sidewalk. My daughter would ride on the sidewalk. So I think that we're looking at it as maybe a problem for potential people that aren't experienced riders or that. But the fact is that that's not a it's an even flow between the asphalt and the concrete right at that spot, correct?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a transition and a lip going from the asphalt to the concrete.
But not really a lip. I mean, but it's not going to catch guys that ride.
You know, I'm not going to right after an overlay or something. I mean, you try to make those transitions.
And that's what the sidewalks there is for the less experienced, for people who want to walk, or those that are my wife, my daughter would ride the sidewalk. They just don't like riding in the street anyways. And it's a steep hill, so the fact is only good riders are going to be riding there. I think that maybe have you seen accidents there? I rode that a lot before they had the construction, but
it's changed a lot since the construction's occurred. Before there were 2 lanes, so if there was a cyclist, there used to be groups of cyclists, and cars would just simply move into the inside lane and leave the right-hand lane open for those cyclists. Now that that's gone, it's forcing cars and cyclists into less than 1.5 lanes. And the other day I was driving down the road, and there was a guy on a mountain bike. And mountain bikes don't go as fast as road bikes. I mean, I've seen road bikes go down there going 50 miles. My husband can go down there going 50 miles an hour. I mean, he can go, and he was a professional cyclist. But for a mountain biker who's just finished Whiting Ranch, finished up at Concourse Park, wants to go home, and he's riding down this road, and he was, because as you see, the asphalt narrows significantly right there toward the end of the screen, and it was forcing him into oncoming traffic, because as a cyclist, professional or not, you're going to hit that dip and you're going to bite it, because it's enough of a depression that it could cause an accident if you stay in that lane. So he was forced to ride along the white dots, which put him practically in my lane. And I can maybe it hasn't caused an accident yet, but I just don't want to see an accident happen. I mean, we've had enough tragedy up in our area in the last couple of months. I don't want to see any more. And this has been something that's been very important to me since the road had been redesigned. That storm drain is just such a bad location because of the steep decline with the water jutting across the lanes of traffic. I mean, if we really need to move the storm drain anyway, if we're going to do that, just let's give us as much asphalt as possible so cyclists can go through that narrow area more safely.
And what I'm asking for is that whatever we do, we don't come back in 2 years and decide because we did that, we now have to do this. Let's try to look at the whole thing, the street before, the street on the side, the street in back. What's that going to do? What are the implications of that? Otherwise, we end up coming back and redoing things and wasting money. So I don't mind the solutions, and you know better than me what to do there. I'm just concerned that it be part of a look at that whole thing. So whatever we do most economically.
I posted questions, and I polled the residents periodically about this road, and everyone's got their ideas, about what should be fixed and what shouldn't be fixed. But overall, the consensus is this area here is the most dangerous, and it's because it is on such a steep decline. All the other areas have a lower speed limit, and it's not as steep. And now you're gaining traction from all the cars coming down, and now the cyclists coming down and converging in this little area. So based upon resident feedback, I think if we were to just fix this, I think this would make the road much safer, and I don't see us needing to revisit Saddleback Ranch Road again for a very long time.
That's a promise, right? So I don't want to hear about it for the next 4 years.
I will do my best.
Yeah, and I don't 20,000 here, 50,000 there, 30,000 here. Ultimately, it adds up. So I'm not opposed to any particular project. I just hate redoing projects.
Before I'd like to come up and see it. So.
Or do you want to, since we have a traffic and parking commission, is that a traffic issue?
Well, this is a CIP thing.
Yes, no, it's not really a traffic issue. Okay. Well, what's your, somebody make a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve option number 2. Would you mind panning to option number 2 and we can look at it? It's where we move the storm drain further up in the hill, the road, so that the water actually catches and doesn't jut across the lane of traffic, and that we cut in and just allow for a little bit more blacktop so that cyclists can get through that area safer.
Do we have a second? Okay, absent the second.
Oh, you're kidding me.
What do you want to do?
You're kidding me, Smalls.
I make a substitute motion. I'll make a substitute motion. I'd like to come up with Councilwoman Basil, or Mayor Pro Tem Basil, and see it. So could we table this for tonight and bring it back at a future meeting, just with what we have here? So I'd like to.
If I may suggest, we have next year's CIP that we need to, we'll start building actually sooner than we think in the spring. So that might give us some time to look at it and get some better cost numbers for the different alternatives. If that's something we could bring back for that CIP discussion, if that's the council's preference.
Is there some reason? Is there an imminent threat? I mean, is it a safety issue that we have to deal with this as soon as possible? Or?
Well, I see it as a safety issue, and especially if we end up with any heavy rains at all, we're going to end up with a repeat of what happened last year, which is gushes of water crossing lanes of traffic, causing people to hydroplane. It is a safety hazard. If we have rain, God help us, hopefully we'll have rain soon.
Well, I don't think in the next 2 weeks. So
No, not in the next 2 weeks.
Tabling it, you're suggesting that the two of you get together with Public Works, go up there, look at it, and
bring it back.
make some kind of decision.
That way that we can maybe, depending on how drastic it is, I mean, we can either bring it back to council or put it up to our budget, put a budget in for next year for CIP.
So you don't need that approved tonight. In 2 weeks, it would still be okay?
we work for the council, so whenever you guys want to approve it, we'd be glad to build it.
If we approve, you'll build it.
They will come.
All right, well, I'll second Councilman Voigt's motion to let you guys go ahead and bring it back.
Is this to table the entire item?
No.
Or to bifurcate?
Just bifurcate.
Okay.
Just this one item.
Just this one part, so is the motion to approve the rest of the CIP?
No, I have a whole
So you do
bunch
that
of more
separate.
stuff. No, I have
All
more
right, that's what I'm trying to get at here. So.
Yeah, okay, just this item, and then
Okay,
we'll...
understood.
Because there's more items to go through. All right, well, let's vote on this one item. So we have a motion to set up a little subcommittee, come back 2 weeks or whenever you can, and make a recommendation. So Councilman Voigt's motion, my second, let's vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, did you have anything else there?
I did not.
Okay, so I had a couple things. One is on the this is now all on the capital improvement additions. The Whispering Hills, the $50,000 to have another meeting on Whispering Hills. So we've had, I don't know how many meetings on Whispering Hills, 2, 3, spent probably $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on all those meetings, $35,000, $40,000 on all those meetings. And at the end of all of them, we come up with multiple people want a dog park, an indoor soccer arena, a passive park, a community education park, and some people want to sell it to Starbucks and take the money and put the money into Normandale and et cetera. So, and we come up with variations of that. And I think, what is it, Einstein's insanity is, why are we going to do this again, particularly now when we've got the neighborhood parks to finish, Veterans Park to finish, the Civic Center to finish, the list is like 50 things long. Why are we going to put this on the agenda?
Mayor, members of the council, that is a great question. So in our 5-year strategic plan, starting the design work for that park was plugged into this current fiscal year. So we were following through with that direction. If the council would like to delay it, we could certainly do that. But it's consistent with what's in the 5-year plan.
Okay, it's something we need to do. I'm just thinking, this is not the year. How many times do we have a discussion and you tell me, well, there's so much on our plate already, do you really want to do that? So it's really, with the Civic Center out of our way, with the 10 parks done, with the Veterans Park, we have time and energy to put into it. Now it just seems like it would be a burden on top of a lot of other things that need to be done and that need our attention. So my feeling is we postpone that
Right.
for next year.
Well, yes, you have some options. So with that in mind, you could approve it tonight, and we could start it after Civic Center, after Portola Park, or you could choose to approve it as part of your next 2-year CIP and have it scheduled a little further out. It's really up to the council.
We could approve it tonight and still come back. I mean, the fact that we can keep, because the fact that it's in next year in our 5-year budget, right?
Yeah, it's in the 5-year plan. So in that plan, you would ask us for this fiscal year to start the design work and then build the park the following year. But it doesn't mean that that plan can't be adjusted, but that's just what you laid out schedule-wise in the 5-year plan.
So what are we using the $50,000 for, the city to have more design build out?
It would be for the design process. So typically,
don't we kind of have a sketch in what we kind of want there?
No, we want all those things, I said.
Oh, then we do have to do so. We want all those things?
No, we don't want to. We can't have all those things, but that's, why are we going to spend... Eventually, we have to get back to it, but it seems to me, when we get some of this other stuff off our accomplished, and you're saying we could approve it tonight, but I don't want to. In other words, I don't want to see a Whispering Hills design workshop in January.
Right. We could allocate the funds so that the community has the understanding that the funds are allocated, they are set aside. And then it's a matter of, in terms of workload, when we actually start the process. But I believe Director Wasserman has some additional information from our last planning process.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Mayor, as you mentioned, we did, in 2015, we conducted 2 workshops. We did not reach a consensus with the community. Subsequently, as part of the neighborhood parks planning, when we talked about the 10 parks, we held a separate workshop to talk about Whispering Hills for anyone who wanted to come. Most of the people that showed up were gardeners, and they agreed that they wanted some kind of a passive park.
Gardeners.
Gardeners, yes, not gardeners.
There were gardeners there,
Gardeners.
too.
Good catch. Anyway, excuse me. I didn't expect that. So what I'm getting at is we're entering this, we've deviated significantly from the normal park planning process. Usually by this time, we have a consensus from the community. There's a common vision that's shared with the community and the city council about what we're going to build. You might recall that several months ago, the city council gave us a cap. I believe it was $2,050,000 to spend on this park. That includes design. Once you factor in the money for design, construction management, there's likely a lot of grading at that park to bring it down to the level of the street. We might have to do something to address the slopes there. The construction budget is probably about $1.5 million. So what I would have done, if you want to proceed in designing this park, since I don't know that there is a really clear consensus, I would hire a designer to basically bring some conceptual designs to council with some ideas for what would fit that budget. Because I think that the budget's going to be, it's going to limit what we can do with the site. That's how I was going to approach that.
Yeah, it still leaves me with, we have so much to do. In, critical things, the Civic Center and all the buildings, et cetera, the 10 parks, the Veterans Park, the Portola Park, the new dog park. Why are we whipping ourselves and adding this to it in the next 6 months or so? And I like your idea. I like it. It just seems...
I think it's a great idea. But, I would like to keep it on the CIP budget. Just because we approve it tonight doesn't mean we have to start tomorrow. But, if in, say, March, things are really clearing up and a lot of the work that you guys have been doing is done, we can get it started then as opposed to waiting until the next cycle, which puts us in July, August. So having the money there earmarked for the project, and you guys can help set the schedule of when we can actually, you guys can actually, factor the time in to get it done. So I would like to still approve it tonight.
So I'll make a motion that we leave it in the budget. And so the fact is, then you guys put it in and schedule it when you guys feel deemed ready.
Yeah, and I think that's the general.
And I'll second that. Yeah.
So I'll make that motion.
I don't think we even need a motion for that because that's, you have the understanding it's in there already, approved, so we don't need it. Okay, slope management. First of all, the slopes on Muirland look awful, and someone complained about that a couple months ago. You guys came in there, did a beautiful job. So what I don't understand in this is you propose to spend $60,000 on design and engineering costs, but you already know that we're going to spend $210,000 on what we're going to do there. So if you already know what we're going to do there, why are we spending $60,000 to design what we're going to do, since you apparently already know what we're going to do?
Got it.
Got it?
Very good question. And as I reread it, I understand where the questions came from. So let me... There we go, citywide. So we've got 3 areas in particular that we're talking about 40 acres in total, that aren't the landscape slopes that you see. These are the things tucked away that we really don't see, and there's risk associated with those slopes. Risk of slope failure, risk of erosion, things of that nature. We're talking about preventative maintenance, which isn't always exciting to talk about. But to answer your direct question, the $200,000 or so was things that we need from a temporary, and it wasn't very clear from a temporary maintenance standpoint to keep us going. The $60,000 was to come back and really assess what we have out there from an engineering perspective. We've been spending about, the last 2 years we've spent about $200,000 in temporary fixes, and we'll flip through some of the pictures there. So we're talking about, so that's the first one. So that's above Vintage Vintage Park. You can see the, I'm going to do this so I don't have my back to you. See the homes, private property down below. If you go to the next slide, that's a trail out there. You can see the various gravel bags that we've put over there over time. Those last a year or two. And then the third slide kind of sums up what probably the biggest risk part of it has. And this is in the area behind, really in between, say, El Toro Road and Mission Viejo border up in the hills. You can see the various rows of gravel bags that we've put in there over time. And that's above homes where those slopes, if eroded, potentially could go down onto private property, and it has. And so we've been working with the homeowners there. So it's an issue, and as we're talking through the budget process and asking for or requesting more money to really deal with these, and kind of from a maintenance standpoint on a temporary nature, putting these gravel bags out, you can see the various rows behind it and in front of it over the years it's been out there. We thought, let's take a step back, let's get some solid engineering done where maybe we go in there, and part of the plans is putting in some V-ditches and some concrete ditches and some other things to capture and really structural improvements. And I'm not sure of the magnitude of the issue and of the problem. So we're trying to give you an idea of the big picture of from a maintenance standpoint, what kind of money we're spending. Let's take a step back, try to get through this winter, but let's really get some topographic surveys out there. Let's really understand what's happening, get some experts out there from an erosion control and a slope perspective. We can really assess our risk, understand what's out there, get a plan, and then over time develop the capital improvements that would really help solve it in the long run versus kind of a year-to-year Band-Aid approach. That was the idea behind it.
Okay, well, I apologize. I didn't get that from the report.
No, you didn't, and I apologize for that.
Okay, and then what you're saying makes sense. It's a good. You should talk to. Is Julie here? I saw her before. Yeah, you should talk to Julie from the Beach and Tennis Club. They did some V-ditches and things like that worked pretty well and avoided those kinds of problems. So, okay, then I have no objections there. My final objection is to the sports park fencing, which I don't know if it was you and I, or was it you and I who went out there about a year ago looking at it was us, huh? And at the time, so they have planters, and people walk through the planters. They don't take the 3 steps this way and 4 steps, they walk through the planters, and which makes for ugly planters. So the thought then was put some healthy cactuses in there. They're not supposed to be there, and it saves water. It's nature, it's native species, etc. And instead you're coming back with building fences. So I don't understand what happened to the cactuses and why we going with the fences.
I think we're at a there it is, great. Our particular concern is the 3 planters here, raised planters that overlook the turf area in particular. Great viewing area, it gets trampled a lot. Really, it's a preference. So we came looking at keeping the theme of the wrought iron and trying to make it look nice. Disneyland has some of those in some of their little areas along Main Street. Something to keep people out. Cactus certainly would help. I venture to say that would possibly still get knocked down, but cactus with active little kids and inflatable balls running around might not be the best mix for what we want to do, though effective. We could also look at rocks and cobblestones and something that we don't have to repair all the time if we wanted to go that direction. It's kind of a preference after walking it last year about the direction we were hearing about keeping it pristine and keeping it looking nice we thought, okay, if we want it pristine, nice, with plants, kind of have to fence it off. If we want it a different look, we don't have some of the cactus out there, whatever, we could make that look, I don't know, some of the risk inherent with that, without fencing could still get trampled. Or we could go gravel rocks and things like that, the cobblestone, some of the rocks we have out in front. But that's less plants, so we weren't exactly sure. It's a preference, right? It's a look and a preference, and so we wanted to say, this is something we know we can do, but we'd really like to entertain, hear from council on this, or we could go back to the Parks and Rec Committee and our commission and get some ideas too. But it's really a aesthetic and practical.
Well, and also $85,000.
It's a lot of money.
A lot of money for fences. Yeah.
I actually, my daughter being a soccer player, I'm at the sports park a lot. I actually think that it'd be a good investment for the amount of money that we pay for continually replanning that. I think that it would tie in well because at that location, if you've been out there, we've got the high steps that we've kind of sealed off because they're actually seating steps, and we've made narrower actual stepping stairs at the ends, and wrought iron is in to protect people from walking over the deep step-offs. I think it'd tie in well. I think that there's spots out there that you could put stepping stones by some of the barbecue areas to where people don't have to walk through the planters, but put stepping stones to where they have a stepping platform so they're not stepping on bushes. There's stepping stones. I mentioned that when we first did that and we talked about it. We never got back to it, but I think that the park with the renovation and the grass and now the fertigation that we're having there, the grass looks better. The plants are lasting better because we're not putting salt water on them any longer. So I think that this would be a good additive to the look of the park.
But here's the problem with the fence, forgetting even the $85,000. So now the little kid with the ball, and the ball goes over the fence. So now he's got to climb over the fence, trample whatever's inside to get the ball. So I don't see how the fence is going to stop the trampling, and then it creates a hazard for the little kid climbing the fence. So what have we solved?
Were we talking about doing a lower fence to where I think that there's not that many balls that actually go up in that plan. There are balls that go up there, but they're not going up there all the time because most of the kicking of the balls is more centered to the center of the fields. I think there's more bouncing along there, but balls are going to go over that. But I think if it's a lower fence, I think it's just a deterrent.
Our envision was a lower fence, not a 6-foot high fence or something like that. Certainly, no matter what we put out there, it's pros and cons, right? And it's going to be vandalized. So, again, it's an aesthetic preference. But you're absolutely right. You're still going to have people in there. A lot of people go up there to stand and to look out, and it's a great viewing area and great height, and then they walk through it. So the idea of the fence was kind of to prevent the casual cutter through and the hanging out up there. But
all right, so we have two ideas: the original idea, the fences, and my idea, which is xeriscaping. So, I'll make a motion that we go with xeriscaping instead of the fences.
I'd make a substitute motion that we go with the lower wrought iron as a deterrent.
No, that's already there, so that's already in the discussion.
Okay.
So if this fails, that succeeds by default.
Okay, I'd like to make another substitute motion.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I would actually like to go and walk it and have my kids walk it and see how they interact with it. So would you, on the same day you and I go check us out of Back Ranch Road, can we go drive over to the sports park and check out the sports park?
2 for 1.
Deal.
Okay, then...
I'll second her substitute motion.
So that was a motion to continue?
Yeah.
That part of
continue
it?
that item.
Just that portion?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, let's vote on that. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Voigt. Vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now a motion to accept everything else, the balance.
I just wanted to go through...
Oh, sure. Anybody else have other things?
Yeah. Real quick. So we're like $4,000 a soccer net. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that what those things cost? I know they're big
correct.
goals, but
These are the
sure.
big 30-foot high nets, yes.
Wow.
That's our estimate.
Crazy
Specialized,
expensive, so.
very specialized.
Yep. Wow. I kind of look at this whole park amenities replacement. I'm just going to give you my take on it. That we ended up with some extra funds, so we're trying to figure out how to spend them. And that's how I look at it. And it might not be how you ended up moving forward with these, but we ended up with some excess funds, so we're trying to figure out how to spend it. And I guess my concern is, where are we putting these sorts of things in the budget in years when we don't have excess funds? I mean, this sports park's only 4 years old, and it looks like because we have the excess funds, we're spending $15,000 on soccer net replacement. We're already having to do some, I guess, repairs and finish of the dance floor. I don't know, are we going to have to do that every 4 years? Okay. So how are we budgeting this? What should we be doing rather than looking for excess funds to handle this? How should we be putting this into some normal cycle rather than looking for opportunity dollars?
I mean, like a reserve spending.
Well, I'm not sure, but it could be reserves, could be, infrastructure replacement, things. We're going to have the same issues at the Civic Center as we're starting to have more city facilities, where in the past we've basically been renting a lot of facilities. We haven't had significant infrastructure replacement costs. It's been park upgrades, picking 10 parks at a time every, few years or something. So.
Mayor, members of the City Council. So in the budget this year, the Council adopted, we have $100,000 in there, a little more than that, to create an asset management plan for the entire city. So what we're going to do is go through and get every asset in the city, soccer nets, what you see here, put them in an asset management plan, put the lifespan on them, put money against them all the way out, then bring that back to the City Council so we can kind of create an overall asset management plan where the council knows each year how much we need to put away or how much we need to do each year on assets for the city.
Which is exactly what we need to be doing, and so
we have not had one in this city, but that's what we're going to create this fiscal year.
And I'm glad that we're doing that, because we come up with a lot of great ideas up here, and the one that you just suggested about Saddleback Ranch Road and some changes to that, I can understand what you're talking about. I wasn't ready to second it tonight, but I can appreciate that your knowledge of that area is much more extensive than mine, and so I'll lean toward what you're thinking there, but we're looking at a finite amount of money and trying to make sure that if we spend this $40,000 here, then it can't be spent somewhere else, and what needs to be replaced for the betterment of the entire community versus what's going to better a particular small section of it, and just trying to figure that all out. So that's where it kind of gets scary for me, when we're trying to figure out on an ad hoc basis how we're going to spend $40,000 here, $100,000 there, and then not paying attention to these things that we need to replace and take good care of. So it's in that was the landscaping fencing, and I wasn't a fan of it. If you guys want to take a look at it, that's fine. I'm not sure that my opinion is going to change, but I'll try to swing by and take a look at that as well, but on my own. But that seems like an enormous amount of cost, and I'm not sure that we're necessarily going to get out of it something tremendous. I'd rather spend that $85,000 in a different way. So, thanks.
Yeah, and in fact, that two of the things I'm really looking forward to, I think the city is going to benefit from enormously, are that asset management program and also our fee recovery study. Those, I don't want to say we're shooting blind, but we're doing a lot of stuff without knowing the total pictures, and both of those will be a big step forward, helping us in the future to move along. Let me ask a follow-up question from Councilman Robinson to the Assistant City Manager and to Public Works. From all these errors or mistakes or things we didn't see, are we learning for the Civic Center? Have we found out, oh, Christ, that happened at the sports park, so with the Civic Center, we got to watch out for this? Are we Are we getting that extra wisdom from all these things that are going on now?
Mayor and council members, yes, we are learning because the sports park was our biggest facility we built in the city so far. So we have learned many lessons on what you need to do to take care of it. So in the pre-planning of the Civic Center, all through those meetings, we were talking about what was happening at the sports park, and we're trying to create solutions or, stuff for the Civic Center that won't happen the same way it's happened at the sports park. Whether it's landscaping outside, how they're walking over it, we got some more synthetic turf at the, Civic Center instead of putting grass in the middle where we know it will just, look like horrible in the summer. So other solutions like that we're implementing into the Civic Center that we're learning from the sports park.
Okay, great. Did we actually vote? I'm lost, so we didn't
No,
vote.
we're waiting for a vote on the balance of the items.
Right. Did we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so
And just to add one more thing to all of that, I mean, this isn't just a sports park and civic center kind of thing. It's across the board, and I know we're talking about that with asset management, but I mean, I've talked numerous times about illuminated street signs and things of that nature. We shouldn't have to have residents come and show us like holes in tennis courts and things like that. We should have a pretty good understanding of when things need to be replaced and not wait for somebody to complain. That's one area. When it comes to asset management, I don't want to be complaint driven. I want to make sure that we've got a good plan in place. So I like what we're doing, but the proof will be in the detail that comes out of it, and how we act. And a lot of that is going to start determining our budget decisions, and we're going to have to make some tough ones, because if we want to maintain things at a certain level, just like the PCI with our streets at 80% or at an 80 PCI, we're having to spend millions of dollars to keep it at that level. Well, the same thing's going to occur if we're looking at an 80 PCI on tennis courts and soccer nets and all those sorts of things. It has a cost that's associated with it, and that means that we can't spend it somewhere else because we're just trying to maintain what we have.
can we vote?
Wait,
sorry.
we don't have a motion. We have a second,
but
but
not a
we didn't
motion.
get a motion.
Yeah, I thought I made a motion to accept everything,
Okay.
and I thought Colonel Cagley seconded it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
Just
please
got-
vote.
Yeah, I know, we went down the rabbit hole, coming out.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, it's almost the break time. This seems like a natural time to break. They say politics is like making sausage, and I know this may seem excruciating detail, but we're trying to do the best job possible for the city, and sometimes it requires digging into this stuff. Yeah, we usually take a break at 8 o'clock, so we'll take one now, come back at, let's say, 5 past 8. I'm going to move the agenda item around a little bit, and we're going to do items 12, 13, and 14, and then item 11. Yeah. The Bennett Ranch might take the whole time, and then we won't get city business. So we'll see at 5 after 8. we're going to go back to the regular order and do 11 first. But we're going to impose a time limit on the number of speakers. So if you want to speak on item 11, be sure you have your cards in now. And then based on the number of cards we have, we're going to divide that into the 30 minutes. So anybody else have a card to submit? All right, Jennifer, how many cards do you have to speak?
11.
11? Okay. And Facebook has 1? So you have 11, that's 12. Somebody do the math. 12 divided into 30.
Your Honor, I think there's another coming up, so
Okay.
I'll have 12.
13 into 30. Let's do 2 minutes then we have plenty of time. Because there is a time limit. That is, the time limit is 30 minutes.
So we...
Well, the option is that the rest of the city's business doesn't get done. So I have to weigh, the rest of the city business versus this one item.
City Manager, you
Everybody's
were
waiting.
going to say something before we go on. I'd like to hear what you were going to say. Right as you take a bite of food, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to remind you that we actually don't engage in exchanges like this for purposes of the public record. And under the Brown Act, there's the council's opportunity to speak, and then there's the public comment period. And so we need to sort of stick with that format.
Okay, so maybe I could just make a friendly note to the audience that we're going to try to keep this under to the 30-minute mark, because that's generally the time we do allow for each item. We have had times where there have been, 50, we had one time 75 speakers, and I believe we limited their time because there were just so many. So we're just asking in honor of everyone's time, we want to get through these things as quickly as possible. If people, as they're coming up and speaking, can just speak quickly, and maybe we don't limit their time frame, but maybe they can govern themselves if they can just speak quickly so we can get through this item fast. Because we have a lot of discussion beyond the public comment portion.
All right, do you want to call up the speakers?
Yes, Your Honor. We have Vincent Burke, followed by John Bush.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you again. Vincent Burke, Lake Forest. $50,000 spent on Whispering Hills meetings. $2 million set for a park project. How much money have you spent on converting that empty lot at the end of Farthing alongside the railroad tracks to off-street parking? How much money have you spent on converting that so-called storm drain control plane over between Carefree El Toro and Springwater? How much money have you spent on converting that over into off-street parking? It's been stated in the past that the Eves Apartments has less than 2 parking spaces per unit. Viejo West Condominiums has 2.47 internal parking spaces per unit. The typical single-family residential home has what? 2-car garage, 2-car driveway. That's 4 off-street parking spaces per unit. I'd like to give you an offer here, make you a deal. Each of you 5, select a name from anyone who speaks after me who desires to have parking permits for their streets. And select them at random. Please ask them if you could go home with them and take a look at their garages, if they'd be kind enough to open the garage door for you. Mr. Gardner, you've done this informal survey. You are all aware that I've done informal surveys in my neighborhood. The sad fact is that most people do not use their garages for parking. They use it for recreation rooms. They use it for daycare centers, for preschool, storage, anything other than parking. My deal to you is that for every residential unit you can find where a 2-car garage can accommodate 2 vehicles, I'll give you and that homeowner a box of Krispy Kremes. Okay? For everyone that can only accommodate one or no cars, y'all owe me 2 boxes of Krispy Kremes. From my study, I've determined, and you know this as well, Mr. Gardner, that I'll be giving out 2 boxes of Krispy Kremes, but getting 8 in return, okay? And that's just the sad fact of it. That applies to single-family residences. The same thing occurs in my neck of the woods in the condominiums. People who do not use their garages for parking their cars, and yet you're being asked to deprive everyone else, condominiums, apartments, of valuable street property parking to accommodate single-family residences, and we're all paying taxes for that. Anyways, I've talked about this before. There's my offer. Report back if you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
John Bush, followed by Alan Rosenbaum.
Welcome.
Thank you. I would just be afraid to have a couple of the council members deciding on anything to do with parking in this city. Number one, Mayor Gardner, who has a direct disdain and lack of respect for the Orange County Sheriff's Department, trying to replace them, fire them all, to have a rent-a-cop system brought in because of his disdain for them. With this goes the character. Just as we just heard on the Facebook, Mr. Gardner's character talking about not knowing anything about a district attorney's investigation, and with that, we know, Ms. Connolly, is Ms. Connolly here? Ms. Connolly. There's an email chain all over the internet about the district attorney's investigation. I know that Mr. Gardner, with the hours he spends on the internet talking about his prowesses as a great mayor and his great love for Adam Nick and all the things going on in the city, has to have seen this on there.
This is permit parking.
Yes, it goes to character as to somebody making the decisions on these permits. And the character of that person sitting here telling falsehoods to the entire city about not knowing about a district attorney's investigation, which is ongoing from the city, from the voters registrar, and the district attorney's office all over the internet, where you yourself, sir, sit and spend hours and hours bragging about what a great mayor you are. You haven't seen
Permit
the district
parking
attorneys?
is the subject, and there are people here who want to speak.
Okay, I'll let that go. Sure. We'd just like to have character of who we have making decisions on where you're parking and what they're doing, and trying to get rid of the parking administration and the sheriff's department because of his disdain for the sheriff's department. I think it's disgusting.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Alan Rosenbaum, followed by Pat Pycook.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Alan Rosenbaum. My wife and I have been residents of Bennett Ranch for 28-plus years, raising 2 daughters in this community. I've also served on the HOA Board of Directors for over 26 years, board president for 24 of those. I'm not here in capacity representing the association. I'm here as a resident of Bennett Ranch in support of grandfathering the existing permit parking program, allowing it to be extended to all remaining streets in Bennett Ranch. We live in a cul-de-sac adjacent to permitted streets that experiences overflow, with a green belt at the end of our cul-de-sac that is heavily used as a pedestrian thoroughfare late at night, much to our dismay. In addition, our street initiates at Glen Acres and backs Cedar Spring, which of course brings us overflow parking as well, and their trash, and the people think they can just throw their trash anywhere. A few years ago, we installed surveillance cameras for our own peace of mind on our house because there are times we've been forced to question safety in our own home. We've observed from our second-story window cars parking very late at night and into the early morning hours on Cedar Spring, only to see people exit their vehicles, walk across Cherry, through the other green belt to the bike path to access the bridge to get to the other side of the creek. We have had all kinds of garbage, other debris thrown over the back wall of our house at night for us to clean up in the morning. It can get so loud at times we can't even open our windows anymore at night for a cool, fresh air breeze when there is one. Okay, and it does blow. But people are just downright loud back there, and that's on Cedar Spring. We've seen people being dropped off at their cars, parked their cars, waited for pickup, watched a guy on a Segway riding through our greenbelt to get to his silver Ford truck on Glen Acres, where the vehicle had been observed parking consecutive evenings until a resident put a note on his windshield. There have been fights, there have been accidents, car vandalization. We know that the surveys have been done before, as recently as in the last 75 days. The actual formula calculation is admittedly flawed. Specifically on streets like Glen Acres and Cedar Spring, where the worst overnight parking is experienced, there are only 3 homes facing Glen Acres, and the street itself actually spans the side fences of 5 houses spanning the majority of that street. Cedar Spring has houses only on one side of the street from Cherry to Glen Acres. Again, the formula is flawed when applied to those streets in particular. We live in an association that is unable to take control of the neighborhood streets with these non-residents because there are city streets for which you, the city, are in control. Permitting is clearly the answer. Pride of our neighborhood being completely disregarded by people who use community as parking lot probably wouldn't even consider throwing their trash out or being loud and disruptive near their own homes. But don't think twice about it in this neighboring community where they don't live or have to be held accountable. I have just a few more sentences, please. Our street is just one of the handful remaining non-permitted streets that are experiencing these problems in Bennett Ranch. This issue cannot be kicked down the road any longer. I've heard the council use the terminology, not kicking the can down the road any longer. Well, postponing this long-standing issue yet again would be doing just that. We are concerned for our neighbors, certainly our property values, as well as ourselves. Clearly, the success of the existing permit parking on some of the streets has worked very well. We know it would also work very well for the remaining streets in Bennett Ranch, and I ask that it be granted at this meeting. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Pat Highcook, followed by Stephen Bobrovsky.
We can go back to 3 minutes, by the way. We're ahead of the schedule. Hi.
Council members. My name is Patricia Pycook, and I am going to be reading for Courtney Lee. And before I get started, I want you to know we have 2 cars. They are in the garage all day and all night, except for when we're leaving to go to the store or whatever. So count us in. My name is Courtney Lee. I am a Lake Forest resident, and I am opposed to permitted parking in Bennett Ranch. Permit parking is not the answer to the parking situation. The Bennett Ranch community will suffer. It will not reduce crime or make parking more available to us. I know this by personal experience in a similar situation. After purchasing a home in San Diego, other residents requested the city to add permit requirements to our street. My husband and I attended city council meetings to learn more about the issue and listen to somebody from the city council warn us of the downside of permit parking. Unfortunately, the residents voted for the permits. Afterwards, we were required to purchase a permit every year to park in front of our own home. In order to throw a birthday party for our children, we had to ask neighbors if we could borrow their visitor permits for our guests, and or tell guests to park several blocks away because each resident was limited to 2 visitor permits. Additionally, we had to worry about friends and relatives, hired help driving off with our visitor permit. We often would move our car to the street so our driveway would be free for our guests. One time we missed the notice for buying new permits, and we received a ticket a short time after my permit expired when I had been pulled out of trying to get into my driveway, trying to shuffle the cars for a shuffling act. Ticketing officer paid no regard to the fact that my car was in front of my house and I was standing right there to put my car back into my driveway. In addition to the financial burden of purchasing all of the permits year after year, making life difficult whenever anybody came to our house, our neighbors and I were victims of crime. After permit parking was put into place, our car and our neighbors' homes on separate occasions were broken into and burglarized. 3 years ago, we moved to Lake Forest, and we love our home on Cedar Spring. Fellow homeowners of Bennett Ranch, please do not be fooled by this Band-Aid situation. More parking and a regular police presence is the most proper solution. Thank you. And thank you for your consideration, Courtney Lee.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Stephen Bobrovsky, followed by Billy Mitchell.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening, welcome. I'd like to welcome you guys to our problem we have down there at Bennett Ranch. I'm Steve Bobrovsky. I live on Glenhurst. Been there 18 and a half years, and I'd like to ask you to please grandfather in our streets as soon as possible and do the right thing. I am frankly very disappointed in what's gone on in that neighborhood over the last several years. Frankly, it's gotten pretty bad. Our gates have been destroyed, fences laying in the dirt, the trash, the transient action going on all day and night. Frankly, it's pretty bad. I also would like to ask if the parking council is here, if there's any people here from there tonight. I don't know if there are.
There are a few here.
There's a few here. And I'd also like to let you know that you can do the right thing by bringing this and helping us out. You know, I'm asking you guys for help here. We need help down there. And it's gotten pretty bad. I mean, I'm not going to rehash all this stuff that's been said. You guys have heard it. But it's at the point that, you know, we're not going to get any better. We're just trying to protect our neighborhoods down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mayor, council members, Sheriff. You've heard some passionate pleas for help this evening. Rather than go into rehashing most of that, I'll just say that my wife and I moved into Bennett Ranch about 3 years ago, and in our first year, we had an intruder in our backyard. I had to hold that intruder down, dial 911, and 20 minutes later, the sheriff's department arrived. And unfortunately, I couldn't hold the guy any longer. So in addition to the parking issue, it's a quality of life issue. It's a safety issue. Children playing in the streets, people racing up and down the streets to the cul-de-sac to drop people off, damaging property, trash on Crestbrook and Princeton Way, unbelievable. Last week, or last council meeting that we had, you talked about all the improvements to the parks. Well, the trash down at Cherry Park piles up. It's different every day. I mean, it's just it's like a debris field. It's unbelievable what people have done down there, what they do in all hours of the night. And in addition to that, we have fireworks, unbelievable, professional, illegal fireworks going on all hours of the night. So it's not just a parking issue. I wanted to emphasize that it's a quality of life issue. We've invested in these homes. We remodel these homes. We do our best to keep them up. We're out in the front yards in our driveways on holidays and Valentine's Day, Easter, and we see these people coming and going and climbing over fences, and it's just it's unbelievable what we've experienced in the 3 short years that we've lived there. So I'll again appeal on behalf of Bennett Ranch and the people that are here. I know your job isn't an easy one. You have a lot of responsibility and weight on your shoulders, and I appreciate that and respect that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Hickey, followed by Brad Miller.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is David Hickey. I'm legal counsel for the Bennett Ranch Homeowners Association. I love it when a client gets fired up about and very passionate about an issue. Makes it easy to talk about it. There is a grave concern about what is occurring in the Bennett Ranch community. We're aware of the parking permit program and the establishment of that, but I want to make, if the council is not prepared to grant the parking permit program for the balance of the community, then I would encourage the traffic commission or the parking commission to consider how flawed perhaps that policy is. For instance, you can have 100% of the homes in 20% of a street, much like Cedar Spring, which is a long street, but they park in a dense area where it's closest to where they can enter and exit to access their units in their community. So that's a real problem when you have a sort of a general nature of the survey program. Also, the parking permit program talks about you shouldn't implement a program that moves people in, to other portions that impacts. And here we have the parking moving interior to Bennett Ranch, so it's affecting a smaller group of people, a greater group of people who weren't previously affected. Recently, the association consists of 354 homes. 130 people who weren't part of the program petitioned to expand the permit program, which had been submitted. So it's a significant amount. And if we need to have a survey performed, we can certainly do that. You heard about how the association is surrounded by groups of other developments, and those developments or private streets are pushing people into a Bennett Ranch neighborhood, unfortunately. So the people in Bennett Ranch are affected by other communities. Because they're public streets, they don't have really the option to do what they want to do, which is to restrict parking in their community. That's up to the city, and you have the mechanism to do that. We heard about the safety issue. The safety issue is real. There were very powerful pictures that were submitted to the council that showed the debris, the trash, the litter, and the other things that are affecting the quality of life for the residents of Bennett Ranch. And we would encourage you to please follow what has been said on the passion. Allow these people the ability to park freely within their community, not have the litter, not have the noise, not have the vandalism. There was a gate that was destroyed that I'm told cost $4,500 to repair because people wanted to access their portion of the community. So please do the right thing and grant the parking permit program for the balance of the Bennett Ranch community.
Thank you.
Brad Miller, followed by Andrea Butts.
Welcome.
How's it going? I think you're pretty convinced why everyone's here. I can't believe Bennett Ranch had to hire an attorney. That's hilarious. That's kind of funny. I'm here for letter A, so like the 11A. You're going to vote on it tonight. Do I need to be concerned? I mean, we've done everything. So we've gone through all the trials and tribulations that you set forth, and we've passed them all. Almost unanimous homeowner adoption. We passed all the survey guidelines and everything that you could possibly ask. We didn't have to hire an attorney, but I think you should show Bennett Ranch and vote tonight that you support Lake Forest and the homeowners. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Andrea Butts, followed by Craig Post.
Hi, welcome.
Hello again. So I am part of 11A as well. That's the Stern Circle, Farthing, and Laurel Grove, who we've gone through everything that Bennett Ranch is now fighting through. Just a few reminders, and I can speak for myself. I have 5 cars. I have 4.5 drivers. I only need 1 spot on the street, and I'd like it to be on my own street. Mainly for us, where we hit the biggest problem with parking is just a reminder, it's not necessarily I can't park on my own street. I can't put my trash cans out. My street hasn't been cleaned in over 3 years. We have all the trash problems from the residents of the apartment complex. The apartment complex overflow. They not only park their cars on our streets, they hang out in their cars on our streets. We find water bottles filled with urine dumped in our yard. We have all the trash that they just leave in the streets, leave in our yards, leave in our bushes. They are not helping to take care of the neighborhood. Most of us in the white shirts are longtime residents of this particular neighborhood. We've lived with this apartment complex for 20 years. It's only been within the last 3.5 years that we've had these issues. Before that, we got along great with the management, we got along great with the residents, and it was a cohesive community, and we worked all together as a neighborhood. It hasn't been like that since then, and it's just gotten worse because they've had such turnover in the residents, they've had so many illegal subletters come in, they just don't have the same sense of ownership and pride for the street and pride for the neighborhood that we're done. We're fed up, and we really need to have the permits put in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Craig Post, followed by Danielle Weiland.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm also a longtime resident of Bennett Ranch. Bought our house in 1996. I can only give you anecdotal observations, but I think that's sort of what we're all here, what we're all about. I have seen what the permitting process has done to those areas where that was granted versus the areas now that are experiencing all of the issues that originally you had decided maybe we need to test this one area. The test worked. The test worked. So I think what we need to do now is expand that and incorporate the entire community. This is not something that's, in theory, if we try this, it'll work. We now have practical experience of what has happened with the streets that are permitted versus the streets that are not. And I think if we make that value judgment, then we'll do the right thing here. But until we do that, we do experience the issues that everybody's been talking about. It's a sad situation. I can't go over why, in the past 3 years, that things have changed. But it's obvious that there are more cars in this general area, whether that's because there are more people in a particular units of housing, or whether that is because of the residents. I know, for one thing, that I don't see any of my neighbors going out in the car and trashing the streets. In fact, I see just the opposite. I see good, solid citizens out there sweeping up after these people. And it's a sad situation. So with that, I just want to put my word in. Again, as a longtime resident, I really think you need to take a look at the practical experience we now have with the permitting process and the streets without the permitting process. And one final note, in my realm of business, $4,000 for a soccer net's way too much.
Danielle Weiland, followed by Tom Williams.
Yeah, hi, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Wieland. I live off of Sky Drive, and I'm adjacent to Stella Court. We're not in Bennett Ranch. We happen to be just across the street from Bennett Ranch, but we are experiencing this exact same problem. Most of our neighborhood are 4- and 5-bedroom houses in an older neighborhood. Therefore, we have a lot of residents or owners who have adult children or teenage drivers, and therefore need multiple cars per house. To the north of us are 2 apartment buildings, both of those being private, we can't park in. To the east of us are private condos and the Target parking lot. Cannot park in those. To the west of us is permitted parking across the creek. Cannot park there. To the south of us is the sports park. The only option we have for parking is our streets. We have roughly 14 spots on Sky Drive and roughly 7 spots on Stella Court. That leaves us 28 spots roughly between those 2 streets, which are just under 30 houses altogether. That is very, very minimal. So when the apartment buildings and the residents from the apartment buildings come over to our neighborhood and begin to park in there, it makes a huge impact. We have tried and applied for the permitted parking, and we have not met the 75% requirement. That 75% requirement is completely outdated, especially when, for us, that means we can only park 25%, which is, when you look at 28 spots, we are talking about 7 cars between the 2 streets for homeowners, and that's the maximum we can have to meet that number. That is just outrageous to think we can possibly meet that number. Since May, when the apartment buildings have changed their parking policy, we have had increased speeding and driving high rates of speed in the middle of the night. I have been out at evening hours and have seen numerous cars cruising through our street looking for parking spots. There is garbage that they are throwing over our walls as they're parking along 2nd Street, garbage that is being left behind on our streets. We have numerous times where they're moving our trash cans onto the sidewalk so that they can park their car there, and guess what? The trash will not pick up the cans on the sidewalk. We have them dropping off cars and leaving the cars there for days. We have cars with flat tires. We have cars partially blocking our driveway. We have individuals who will park and at 11 o'clock at night get out their skateboard and skate over to the Saddleback Ranch Apartments. Being a cul-de-sac, when you skateboard at night there, that sound just travels into everybody's house. We also then have the gentleman coming back at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, skateboarding back in, revving up his engine until he decides to turn around and drive out of the neighborhood. The Saddleback Ranch, I've been told by traffic engineer Doug Anderson, has over 90 spots empty in the evening hours. I've also been told that Saddleback Ranch Apartments are in violation and that they are actually being fined. I would like to know, how often are they actually being fined, and are they given the maximum, and actually is anything going to be done about this?
Okay, time's up. And now I'll actually, as soon as we're all finished, I'll answer you the question about Saddleback Apartment.
Could I make one other comment quickly?
Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to also say that I live on a cul-de-sac, and I intentionally bought on a cul-de-sac to know all my neighbors. I can text just about every single one of my neighbors right now, and I know every single one of my neighbors and their kids by name. I do not like the idea of these people driving through. I was speaking with one CSO from the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and he told me that the Saddleback Ranch are a problem area. This is what's coming into our neighborhood. This is what is coming into my house, and my kids, while they're teenagers, are home during the daytime and the evening hours at time alone, and I don't like the idea of this. We've already had people breaking into our cars on the street, and I feel like it's just a matter of time before our houses are next.
Thank you.
Tom Williams.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, and attendees, I've got some good news. We beat the 80% threshold. We met it. And we want permitted parking. We've earned it, and we deserve it. And I'm speaking for all the people on Farthing, Green Bay, and Laurel Grove. We worked hard. No, we didn't have a lawyer. It's just good old-fashioned neighbors working together. So please give us that permitted parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further requests from the public.
Have Facebook?
We do have one, sir.
Sure, go ahead.
It is Dan Carlson, comment for council. Due to the current situation with Mission Viejo residents who live in the apartments along Los Alisos parking on Cherry Avenue, there's a need for additional red curb painting, particularly living in the north curb line east of Cedar Spring. The curve in that area is very dangerous with vehicles parked in that area.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to respond to that particular question, comment? But not on that item.
Actually, I was hoping they could say the names of those streets again that needed red curb painting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then we should forward that comment to the Traffic and Planning Commission. That's an item.
And I know for a fact that not only do we have members in the audience that are from the Traffic Commission, but I know that there are others at home that are watching Facebook Live. So, you know, as you guys are up here speaking, the Traffic Commission is hearing you. So,
do we have a staff report? Okay, so we had.
Mayor and members of the council, I suggest we go in order, and so 11A is for Farthing, Stearns, and Laurel Grove. So we have a brief presentation on that, and I will turn it over to Public Works Director Tom Wheeler.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Dave Rogers, our traffic engineering manager, has spent much time working with the various neighborhoods, and we have a report to give you.
Relatively brief report for you, Honorable Mayor and council members.
Excuse me, Dave, before you start, did all council members get a printout of that?
It was laying on our desks.
I don't have one.
It's not under there?
Here, wait. Does he not have that one either?
I just want to stay on page. Thank you.
You got it?
You got it. Thank you. Sorry, David.
Go ahead.
Okay, very brief presentation for you on this particular item tonight. A little background and then the recommendation before you tonight. In February, as some of the residents had mentioned, they've been working with the city for an extended period of time in this neighborhood of Farthing, Stearns, and Laurel Grove. It's the general neighborhood here near El Toro and Geronimo, adjacent to the Forest Glen Apartments. Complaints to date have included a lack of on-street parking, some of the things they had already mentioned, loitering, individuals engaging in disruptive behavior, littering, blocking driveways, etc. For that 2006 period of time, staff completed several initial observations and confirmed that there were some issues occurring, and therefore staff initiated a formal parking survey for Farthing, Stearns, Laurel Grove, and Green Bay. This was, in response to an HOA request on behalf of the residents. In March of 2016, the city collected the data and found that the individual street impact ranged from 20 to 86%. Unfortunately, the neighborhood aggregate was only 71%. And based on those findings, it did not meet the required minimum impact. The city then informed the community association, the residents, and informed them the city would continue enforcement and other related efforts. We continue to work with the Forest Glen Apartment representatives in an attempt to fully utilize on-site parking. More recently, in February 2018, so approximately 2 years later, the City Council, in response to continued resident concerns from this neighborhood, directed staff to conduct a follow-up formal parking survey to determine if the conditions had changed. This would be consistent with your policy in that that allows for a formal follow-up study once every 2 years. The new survey was conducted in March of this year, 2018, and staff determined the impact on the 4 individual streets, in this case much higher, ranged from 50% to 87%, with the 4th Street neighborhood, one including Green Bay, unfortunately only being 69%. However, 3 of the 4 streets, Farthing, Stearns, and Laurel Grove, all individually exceeded the minimum 75% requirement and had an aggregate of 83% impact for those 3 streets. So based on these findings, the required minimum parking impact has been met, and therefore the city proceeded with the next step in the process, which was a vote of the affected residents for these streets to gauge the level of support for permit parking. The policy requires that at least 67% of the affected property owners support permit parking. The city conducted a secret ballot vote in late June and early July of this year, and 92% of the property owners supported permit parking. In summary, the impacted areas meet the criteria in the policy for consideration of parking restrictions, and therefore staff recommends approval of the proposed resolution to implement permit parking. Staff estimates that if the council adopts the resolution, it will take, in order to complete the notification, permit distribution, and signage installation, will take approximately 60 days. And per our policy, a total of 2 permits will be issued to each property, regardless of the number of vehicles registered to the address. That completes our brief presentation, and staff's available for any questions.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
There was a concern from one of the residents that permit parking costs the residents. Is there a cost to giving the residents their permit parking?
Every agency, local agency that has a permit parking program, it structures it differently. Some do charge. City of Tustin, for instance, charges for permits to be issued, and I think, as one resident mentioned, on an annual basis. Here in the city of Lake Forest, we do not charge initially or over time, currently as our policy is structured.
And so,
But this will come up in the fee survey, whether or not we should be and what we should be. So this is in the future, but right now we don't.
All right, so we do not, ma'am, it spoke earlier. Now, if someone has a party, is it a permit they can get online and get extra permits for their party, or a family that's coming in and out of town? They can do that online, correct?
Correct. We have 2 ways of doing that. You can do it old school and come into City Hall during business hours. We'd be happy to assist with that. The more efficient way is through our internet-based system here at the city, where you can, in essence, issue yourself 1-day temporary permit parking passes.
So on that, I'd like to make the motion that we accept 11A and grant them their permit parking.
Second.
And thank you for the diligence.
Okay, unless there are any other comments, we'll call for the vote.
I've had nothing submitted.
Okay, vote, please.
That That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Sorry, one of the previous speakers submitted a number of written comments from Bennett Ranch residents.
Okay, so I'm going to pass those out. All right, before we get started on that, and pass that out. So the parking's a problem everywhere, not just our city, and it's a problem everywhere in our city. And probably a month doesn't go by when some neighborhood isn't complaining about the parking. We've issued parking permits to, 35 over the last 20 years or so, and every time we issue a permit parking, a problem appears in an adjacent neighborhood because it's a fluid system. Oftentimes, but not always, it's an overflow from the apartments, but not always. And the city does have a policy. We revised it 2 or 3 years ago. It was really bad then and still flawed, but better than it was. And it still needs a lot of work. So I'm looking to the Parking and Traffic Commission to seriously revise that policy. And some of the things brought up here are at the basis of the core of what's wrong with that policy. Danielle, one of the earlier speakers from the cul-de-sacs, when she met with me, and I've probably spent 20 or 30 hours meeting with people on this topic in the past 2 months. She met with me and she explained on her cul-de-sac there happened to be a couple of people with multiple cars. Like between 2 homes they have about a dozen cars. So when we go in and look at who are from outside the area, they don't show up as being outside the area. But in fact, they have very little parking space. So that's one of the flaws. Another flaw is this 1,000 feet thing that we insist on looking at 1,000 feet, but sometimes the parking it doesn't range 1,000 feet. It's just 50 feet around a certain area, which is true in Bennett Ranch, the problems there. So there's lots of flaws we need to, while we're dealing with these issues, we need to have the commission seriously go through and come up with a better policy. The policy we have now is better than the one before, and I hope the new one will be better than that. Some of these, I'm really upset with these problems, and particularly the crime and the litter and the noise and the shit that you have to put up with. I mean, this is quality of life, and it's I don't want to come home to my neighborhood every day and to face that stuff. I'm not sure that all of that is permit parking per se, or will be solved by permit parking alone, but it's probably going to improve, and it's just in the street cleaning and the picking up of the trash and all these problems that people have to deal with. It just it's not acceptable to me, and I don't know how to solve those broader problems. Okay, we're not here to solve those broader problems. We're only here to talk about the parking permit. And let's go on to Bennett Ranch. Do we have a staff report on the part? Is there a problem? What's the impact? What's the approval?
Honorable Mayor, council members, member of the audience, this one's going to be a little longer, so I apologize up front for that. This is a discussion for the Bennett Ranch area. We have a map up over there to give you some context as to kind of the areas that are brought into this particular report. Bennett Ranch Homeowners Association is a single-family neighborhood development located between Geronimo, Trabuco, El Toro, and Aliso Creek. There are several multi-family developments adjacent to or nearby, including Viejo West, Carefree, El Toro, and a group of 6-plex units on Village Way. In 2015, the existing permit parking program that was in this general neighborhood, but not actually in Bennett Ranch, was actually expanded to include some portions of Bennett Ranch. Following implementation of this permit parking in this area, a small number of vehicles registered to addresses outside of Bennett Ranch were found parking on other streets in Bennett Ranch just outside of the permit parking area, primarily on Cedar Spring and on Glen Acres. In 2016, the Bennett Ranch HOA requested the city conduct additional reviews per our policy to determine if additional permit parking should be implemented. The city completed 7 full and 9 partial parking studies over the next year on these 2 streets and found that the impact did not meet the minimum 75% impact threshold to consider additional parking. For the full studies, the impacts range from 10 to 19% on Cedar Springs and 18 to 45 on Glen Acres.
Can you explain how can that be? Because the anecdotes we see, the pictures they send me every week, you know, I'm hearing on the one hand that it's impacted the people crossing the creek, and yet when we do the studies, we come up with such low percentages.
Absolutely. When we look at a street, Cedar Spring, and one of the residents commented on it, Cedar Spring is a long street. And so when we look at a street like that in terms of this analysis, we look at the street in its entirety and the available parking on that street. And we recognize and empathize with the fact there's the primary overflow parking is in a very confined area within Cedar Spring. And so you have a situation where a small number of residents have what we like to characterize as 100% impact, while the majority on the balance of this particular street, in case of Cedar Spring, really see no direct impact in front of their homes. I'm not discounting the things that they see otherwise, but no direct impact in front of their homes. And so I think that's where you see some of that.
That's part of the 1,000 foot, so we have no ability now within the code or the regulations to say we're going to do it for 200 feet because that's where the impact is, but not for 1,000 feet.
Correct. As currently structured, there has to be a minimum area of impact. And I suspect, without having been here in 2004 when the original policy was established, they were trying to avoid, one house at a time type thing. So somebody came up with an idea that, 30 homes, 1,000 feet, seemed like a large enough impact that the city should at least look at that and consider that under the right circumstances. So I think that's why we have, like I say, a feeling of disconnect sometimes between photographs that are supplied and the data that we are collecting out there on behalf of the city and the residents when we do these studies.
Well, and the other problem is if we did it for the 200 feet, because that was impacted, the chances are the next 200 feet would feel it. You would just push it down the road.
It's certainly possible, and this is an example here where the initial area in Bennett Ranch was allocated permit parking, and there were quite a few cars in that area that had been identified as overflow from the adjacent neighborhoods, and a portion of them moved into this next area. And in my 30 years experience, I've had variations on that theme. One of the first ones I ever did was a relatively short block, large multifamily across the street, and we did the one street, and the cars just disappeared. They never moved back into the neighborhood. And I think so that's one of the reasons why the policy is kind of structured the way it is because we can't predict with any certainty what can happen. And so perhaps, as you mentioned, the Traffic and Parking Commission might be able to amend it in ways that would help us address some of these issues that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, it's not a bullfight. Try to keep it. We understand this is passionate because this is how you live and this affects you every day. Believe me, we understand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just continuing on with the initial request back in 2016, following the fact that we did not find the minimum impact, we did work with the HOA and other residents to try and address some of the concerns. The city implemented weekly manual cleanups, provided trash cans to the HOA at no cost, amended our municipal code to prohibit the parking of trailers attached to vehicles in residential areas, added some parking on Cherry and 2nd, again trying to draw cars out of the neighborhood, and provided additional parking enforcement. In fact, this was, of course, one of the areas where the council had enough concerns that ultimately added a CSO for parking enforcement, and this has been an area of concentration for them. So in May of this year, 2008, the Saddleback Ranch Apartments, which we've had some minor discussion on prior to this. They eliminated parking on an unpaved area within their property and changed their parking policies. And this resulted in additional vehicles parking in the nearby neighborhood of Sky, Stella, and Second, as one of the residents mentioned. It's kind of the closest overflow area. We have been working with the residents in that neighborhood and the Saddleback Ranch Apartments owners over the last 60 days. We're trying to address the parking concerns. We have completed 2 surveys out there. As the resident noted, that neighborhood has yet to reach the threshold that is in the current policy, and so we hope to continue working with them and see if we can come to some resolution. In early July, the city received an information packet from 2 neighborhood representatives from Bennett Ranch, which, as you can see on the map here, is located across Aliso Creek from the Saddleback Ranch Apartments. In the information, they indicated the vehicles from Saddleback Ranch were now parking in their community. The packet included a petition signed by about 120 residents representing about 96 individual properties by staff's count, and asking the city to bypass its permit parking requirements and implement permit parking for the remaining streets in the ranch. The City Council, having heard those comments, directed staff to prepare a report and bring this matter back to you tonight. Our permit parking policy was established in 2004, in 2017. Our overall residential manual, the impact threshold was set at 75% as part of the original policy, so that goes back all the way to its origins. The primary reason the threshold is set relatively high is that these are public streets. They're operated with tax dollars collected from the public as a whole. Therefore, determining whether or not to take away the ability for the vast majority of the public to use a public facility needs to be considered carefully and to only be considered when severe conditions exist. Since 2004, there have been a series, as the mayor mentioned, a series of permit parking studies, and we have a total of 35 streets. We'll make it 38 now with your action prior to this item, so we're up to a total of 38 streets. In all of these cases, the impact met or exceeded the 75% impact threshold. The city has also studied other neighborhoods that did not meet the criteria, and in all cases, the request for permit parking was denied. During the last 5 years, the city has evaluated 16 individual requests, and of these, 6 have been approved. The other 10 requests did not meet the threshold and were denied. Of the 10, only 1 came close with an impact above 70%. The resident was here earlier for Lavaca. She represents that neighborhood that was at 71%. And as she indicated, unfortunately, we were unable to move forward with the process, and informed her and her neighbors, and we appreciate the fact that you can provide us that information. We'd like to work with her. There's some other things we might be able to do with her in front of her house. She mentioned having the access van come. We have ways to address individual issues like that. The City Attorney's Office has reviewed this matter and recommended that the city's adopted policy be followed when evaluating Bennett Ranch's request. However, the City Council, of course, has the authority to revise the permit parking policy standards. If the Council would like to consider Bennett Ranch requests using different standards from the current policy, the City Attorney's Office is recommending revising the permit parking policy first, so that any new standards may be applicable to all neighborhoods that request permit parking. In response to this latest request, staff did conduct 2 additional parking surveys for the previously impacted streets of Cedar Spring and Glen Acres, one on Friday, July 6th at about 11 p.m. and one at Tuesday at about 3 a.m., or Tuesday, July 11th at about 3 a.m. Results indicate that there are at the most about 8 vehicles on each of these 2 streets that are from outside the neighborhood, which represents about a 12% impact on Cedar Spring and a 36% impact on Glen Acres. Similar impacts to what we found over in the surveys about 2 years ago. Now, the city does realize that parking impacts can vary and fluctuate over time, and we did have one of the residents provide some photographs showing more extensive impacts on a couple of times since we took our survey. So we recognize that the numbers do fluctuate. But even with that information provided by the resident, it would not exceed our current threshold of 75%. Of the vehicles included in our survey, we did find that 2 are actually registered to Saddleback Ranch Apartments. So this does suggest that there's some use of the Bennett Ranch streets by residents of those apartments. The extent of the overflow impacts in general and specifically from vehicles from Saddleback Ranch within Bennett Ranch as a whole has not been determined at this time. We have not done an area-wide survey as of yet. In addition to the petition, of course, the HOA provided a follow-up information from its attorney, who was represented tonight, And we consider that a kind of a parallel request to this petition, and therefore it's in staff's opinion that these two documents taken as a whole represent a formal request that meets our minimum level of support for the city to conduct another survey. In this case, it would be of all the streets remaining in Bennett Ranch, something we have not done to date. We have kind of focused in the Cedar Spring, Glen Acres, that area has been the request to date. In addition, more than 24 months has passed since the last formal review, which is another kind of box to check when it comes to how our policy looks at these formal surveys. So at this time, staff is recommending the city remain consistent with its existing policy and direct us to conduct the formal surveys to determine the level of impact within Bennett Ranch. And as the mayor and council have mentioned to date, staff is also recommending that the council direct the Traffic and Parking Commission to review the parking policy and recommend potential modifications that may include, and these are just staff's ideas and some of the concerns we've had come up, look for ways to perhaps modify the impact threshold, create ranges or something within there that, depending on types of conditions, it could vary. Another one would be to see if we can develop some guidelines for what I'll call residual permit parking. So when you have a neighborhood that has permit parking implemented, perhaps making this residual parking not subject to the exact same standards. That's something else that staff thinks would be appropriate, but we have to kind of work our way through that with the commission.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you put that in English, what you just said?
Basically, as we're dealing with here, or have, believe, dealt with the Bennett Ranch neighborhood, we had a large number of vehicles in a portion of the community. The city implemented permit parking, and some portion of those vehicles relocated into another portion. So it's not that same, and I'll use it just around 100 cars here, of that 20 cars moved. I consider that the residual from a previously implemented permit parking program, and I think there's a reasonableness to perhaps looking at that differently than as if it were a brand new request. With that, staff's of course available to answer any questions.
I do have a question. Obviously, we represent the people. You guys have come and spoken. It's your houses are being impacted. When I drive home tonight, I won't have any strange car parked in front of my house, but sometimes you guys are rare to see curb that's not occupied by a strange vehicle. That's a sad state. But the fact that when they leave stuff like this out there and they throw trash, they clean their cars out from Carl's Jr. or In and Out, leave it on the gutter, leave it on the sidewalk, I think that impacts the quality of life in an immense way. And then when we're talking about that we've given parking permits to other parts of your neighborhood, the residual parking will be just kicked down the road a little farther. It's almost like mowing, cleaning the brush. If you got squirrels in the brush and you clean the brush, the squirrels have just moved farther out in the brush. And so what you're doing is you're moving the cars farther down. And that's where the skateboards come in, where they're actually now using skateboards or that to ride home with, which impacts the quality of life again. When we come home and you know all the people on your cul-de-sac, it's sometimes weird to see strangers coming in and out of your neighborhood that don't live there. I feel your pain. I want it to be the threshold for residual parking permit or neighborhoods, leftover parts of the neighborhood. When a parking permit is set forth and granted to a neighborhood, we've got to lower the standards for the next part of the neighborhood, because the fact is we've seen the problem there, we've addressed the problem there, but then we're leaving it vacant for them. And now the neighbors farther down the street are going to be impacted by that. And I think it's important that we lower that threshold. I'm actually prepared to say that I'd like to make a motion that we approve the parking permits for the rest of Bennett Ranch. I think that as council members, all of us have a duty to listen to the people. You guys have come and pleaded your case. You showed us the evidence. And I think that there's going to be a traffic commission that's doing, but the fact that you guys have spoken now, so I'll make a motion that we grant the rest.
I'll second it. Yeah, Dave, Could you come back, because I have some more questions. As I said before, these conditions are unacceptable to me. All the crime, they can't even pick up your garbage can, the street cleaning, the property destruction, the graffiti, the noise. How much of these problems do you think the permit parking is going to solve, or what more do we need to do to address? Is there something else going on there that we need to address?
I don't honestly want to speculate. I think we can certainly look at neighborhoods and see what the changes have been, what they were, perhaps with the additional cars, and what happens. So
it's a question of going ahead now and seeing if the conditions persist or not. Let me say, I promised somebody, I forget who it was, that I would give you the details on Saddleback Apartments. We did finally find them. Can I talk about this? I have to ask the city attorney before I put my foot in my... Oh, city attorney, tell them what you can, and I'll blame you if something goes wrong.
If I mess it up, you'll blame me? Yeah. Great. The city has been working with the Saddleback Ranch apartments. There have been, I believe, two citations have been issued to date. I don't know the value of those. I know that was one of the questions that was asked, but I don't know the value of them off the top of my head.
If I remember it, can I say?
If you know it.
Yeah, I think the last one was 200, wasn't
it?
Yes, it was 200. So we did start down that process. We are going that process. So, you didn't, all your efforts and calls and meetings, et cetera, did not go unheeded. We are pursuing that on behalf of everybody, including the Sky and Stella. Did you include Sky and Stella in your motion, or do we need to do a second one?
I think those cul-de-sacs, I would say that those are the small streets, and I think we should include them, because otherwise...
Because I had that in mind as well. Okay, so you're amending your motion to include that, and I'm approving the amendment.
Mayor and members of the council, there are two parts to your parking policy. I'd like to bring up the second part, which is the vote among the neighbors to get the 67% for permit parking in the neighborhood. I want to be clear that your motion is to move forward regardless of a formal vote of the neighborhood. I really want you to think about that.
I'm in support of the permit parking, but I think that's a valid point, because we have a very vocal group of people here, and I'm glad that they're here. But there may be a group of people that haven't been heard yet, and I think due process. I think it is important to ask them. I'm in support, and if the rest of the community says we want it, then I'm totally on board. But I don't want to plow over other residents if they don't want it. So I think a formal review should still occur.
Yeah, so you willing to make that subject to...
Hold on. You guys, I heard there was 71% achieved. Is that not...
No, Dave, of the petition that was voluntarily submitted, what percentage of that did that represent?
Petition.
Yeah, I'm sorry, give me a quick second here.
I think it was...
In your report, we have a chart. I'm sorry, on page...
Is it page 148? Is that the one?
3, 4. I'm looking of the staff prepared report. There's a chart where it says petition and HOA request at the top of the page. And it describes the total, again, these are staff counts based on what we have, but the total properties, individual properties within the remaining portion of Bennett Ranch, which is about 2/3 of the Bennett Ranch community, totaled in our count 237 individual properties, of which 96 were represented by the petition.
So that was 41%.
So 41% of the individual properties were... Now, we had 120 signatures. We had a lot more signatures, but a lot of them were duplicates for individual properties.
Right.
So we went through the individual process and found similar ones. And don't get me wrong, we could be off by one or two, but staff is very confident that 6 number is right there in terms of representing individual properties where we have actual signatures on this petition.
96 out of how many?
Out of 237
which is
individual properties.
41%.
So we have a 40, based on staff's calculations, and we have about
That was a
40
voluntary petition that they submitted just to show that people were concerned.
I'm comfortable with my motion, but if someone wants to make a substitute motion and re-vote, but I'm sticking with my motion because the people of Camden that spoke, they're being impacted. So if you guys want to vote otherwise, make a motion.
So do you want to make a substitute that we make that motion subject to, you do a formal assessment thing, right?
If in this case, the city manager is, I believe, suggesting that we at least do the actual vote of the neighborhood, the one that requires 67% of the individual property owners to be in support of the program. Kind of taking, the approach you're taking is kind of moving us past that initial survey and kind of not meeting those minimum requirements, at least in terms of the data we've collected to date, and simply saying we'd like to move the balance of the neighborhood into the next phase of the permit parking program, which is the formal secret ballot that we conduct for the neighborhood. And I believe that is what the city manager is perhaps suggesting.
And when you do these secret ballots, do you take into consideration street by street, so that if 100% of one street says yes and 25% of the next street over says they don't want it, or only 25% say they want it, do you do it street by street, or do you do it as a?
We do look at it on an individual street basis. We are not, the belief is you don't want to impose it upon, now we recognize, and we've actually had a neighborhood, I think it's near Muralins and Lake Forest, where there was a neighborhood or street that said, no, we don't want it. Later on, we came back and looked at that street again. So we do, I want to say, look at that, and I'll use the word respect the belief of the individuals on that individual street, and so we do look at them individually in terms of whether or not they meet this 67% threshold.
I would like to make a friendly amendment that we do this part of the process. If we don't do this, then we are setting a precedent for future communities. And like I said, I agree that permit parking should be done, but I think we should do our due diligence. I think we should do things the right way. How long would it take to do that formal review? How long would it do to do the secret ballot and everything else? How long?
Just so I'm clear, there's kind of 2 steps in the process, as the city manager pointed out. There's kind of the first traditional step, which would be for us to go out as a city and do the license plate surveys of all the streets to determine that. If we're saying we don't,
secret
we're
ballot.
bypassing that, or
Doing
we're
secret ballot, and
choosing not to do that.
Let's get to the meat.
Now we're to the ballot process. We normally grant at least 3 weeks for residents or property owners to respond. Sometimes they're distant property owners. We want to give them an opportunity to do that. The large number of properties in here might suggest to staff a little bit more time for the voting process. And then we have to prepare the individual ballots, because we do secret ballots on this one, because we want to make sure that people are voting in exactly the way they want to in this particular case. The latest one we just had, we had an individual that chose to vote no on it. And so we want to make sure that everyone understands and that you vote whatever your conscience is freely, without anyone being able to know exactly how any individual voted on this process. So it's a lot of ballots. It doesn't mean we can't move quickly on it, but I wouldn't want to put too tight a time frame and cause issues with us. And I'd say we'd probably need at least 30 days to prepare the ballots, and another month I would like to give that many residents an opportunity of perhaps of a month to get their ballots into us.
You said it was going to take 60 days to get the signs and everything else in order for the other one.
On the other one, right, we're issuing the permits and posting the signs.
So we could do all that and get this all in order while you're getting the survey, so they're not going to have to wait another 60 days after the 60 days.
Well, we would have to come back to the council with the results, or the Traffic and Parking Commission with the result of the actual vote, in this case, if that's the direction you're headed. Someone would have to review that to see where we're at. If we're at like the Farthing neighborhood, if it's 80-something%, at some point we have to bring it to the council to adopt a resolution establishing the permit parking area.
Dave, we've been talking with the Bennett Ranch people, and in fact, we've hired a new traffic enforcement officer because of the outcry of the Bennett Ranch people, and we've heard the complaints. We've seen and addressed part of the neighborhood. We allowed the one half of the neighborhood to have parking permits. I've seen the benefit of the parking permits in the freedom that the neighbors have, the residents have in their own neighborhood again, because I think the fear is that it costs money or it's hard to get extra permits. It's a really simple process, and so I'm staying firm with my motion, but if you guys want to make a substitute motion, because I hear your guys' voices, and I respect your guys' opinion, so I think that it's important for us to listen.
Well, here's my problem. It's taken so long, and you're just their time, my time, just to get to here. And then I hate to hear, and the city's going to take another 60 days, and going to take another 60 days. I don't want to enforce. On the other hand, I know what you're saying. There may be a street there who doesn't want it. Suddenly we're going to impose something on people who don't want it. I don't want to do that. But I also don't want to take 60 days and then 60 more days. This has been so painful, going on and on.
I mean, we could certainly try to move up that schedule. Like I said, I think the most important time frame is to make sure that the property owners have an appropriate amount of time to return their ballots. We did have a couple ballots on this latest one where we only had 25 property owners voting. Someone was in Hawaii and somewhere else, and it took almost that entire period of time for them to get it, to respond, and bring it back. So, again, we're dealing with 10 times that many ballots here. And so the other thing I wanted to point out to the neighborhood as a whole, if the city moves forward with permit parking, it will not include Cherry Avenue, because Cherry Avenue is the collector street through the neighborhood. It serves a purpose greater than the individual property owners' needs on that street. It serves as parking and access to a public park, as well as a collector and distribution road through there. So,
but you could do everything to get ready to do it in 60 days, assuming that they come back and they meet the 67%, right? So there's no reason to stall beyond that.
That's what I was thinking also. Why don't we just get everything started? If the process takes 60 days, let's go ahead and get the process started. And in the meantime, while the process is going, let's just make sure and ask the residents. So when we get the report back, the secret ballots back, we'll know at that point, which I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a yes. Now that process will be done, and now they'll only be 30 days away from the signs getting posted and everything done. So there'll be no delay in the process. We're just making sure.
And you can order the signs, and we can tonight give you the authority to go ahead if you meet the 67%. You don't have to bring it back to the council.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not the expert in this. I would turn to the city attorney about how you establish the permit parking.
So I apologize. We've got a couple issues going on. First, we do need a resolution, and we don't have one before you this evening. So we would need to solve that issue. So you would at least need to continue it till your next meeting so we can bring you back a resolution to vote on.
No continuing. We're going to make a resolution tonight.
We don't have a resolution before you.
No, we'll discuss. We have a motion, and she's considering
No, you have to write an actual resolution word for word. So, I mean, if you want to go sit in the closed session room and write one that's legally binding with the city attorney, I guess maybe that's possible, but we can't just put a vague resolution together right now. We have to vote on it. This is government process here. So, I know that it's frustrating for people, but if we don't do it right, we could get sued and the whole thing could fall apart.
If we reach agreement, I'll go in the room and I'll write one up.
Couple of things.
If it's not good enough and we get sued, it all falls apart, and then
why wouldn't it be good enough? I'll go with the city attorney and we'll sit in the room.
All right.
Couple of things.
We'll be here till midnight.
So we do need a resolution. You can continue it for 2 weeks and tell us to bring you back a resolution doing whatever it is you want to do. You can approve the item and direct us to bring back a resolution that you will then ratify in 2 weeks. You can take a 10-minute recess, and I'll go type you up a resolution, and you'll forgive the typos, and we'll clean it up. So there's a variety of ways we can solve that problem. Additionally, you do have one additional speaker slip that has been brought in that the city clerk would like to address with you.
We're past the speaker.
Past that time, but it was handed in, so we wanted to make you aware of it in case you wanted to reopen the public comment. You are not obligated
No,
to.
I don't want to reopen. I want to settle this in the sense. So the thing we're trying to struggle with is, on the one hand, moving forward as quickly as possible, but without imposing something on people that didn't want it.
Your Honor?
Yeah.
I have a question. Mayor Pro Tem used the term resident. You use the term owners. They're different things. If there's an entity owner in Indiana or Massachusetts or somewhere, we're worried about their voting on it, where the people that live in that house are the ones we should be concerned about. The residents are worried.
I think the policy recognizes that the long-term impacts belong to and should be the decision of the underlying property owner. So you have situations where someone is renting or leasing a space, and that is why we want to, and the policy is structured such that the decision about the property owners and not the residents. Residents, tenants can certainly have an influence on the process. They can certainly contact the property owner and describe for them their desire, what they would like to have happen in the process. But as currently structured and is structured in the cities I have worked in the past, it has always been the property owners for these types of permanent changes.
Thank you.
Sure. Do you have, what are your thoughts? That's what we're balancing. We're balancing.
I'll make a substitute motion that we approve the parking permit, but come back with a prepared thing in 2 weeks to ratify it. That would actually fit the law, but the effect is you guys go away knowing that we're moving that direction.
Well, that still hasn't answered the question of, do we want to do the vote? The secret ballot. In order not to trample on something.
I just don't like the time. I mean, the amount of the time that we've spent dealing with the Bennett Ranch parking. We've brought on a parking enforcement officer. We've heard their cries before. We've seen their pictures. So if you guys want to make a substitute motion, I think Mayor Pro Tem was going to make one.
Mayor Gardner, if it helps, you can approve it this evening, make that approval contingent upon the survey being conducted within the next 45 days, 60 days, whatever the time frame is. Assuming that it meets the staff finds that it meets the threshold, then it will automatically spring to life. Assuming we come back in 2 weeks and ratify that action.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That was my motion.
Substitute motion.
Yeah. Oh, that was my friendly amendment, my substitute.
Sure. So what I'm suggesting is that your motion would be to approve the program contingent upon the secret ballot taking place and it meeting the 67% threshold, and then directing us to bring back a resolution in 2 weeks that ratifies that action.
Mm-hmm.
But that lets him go ahead now?
So he goes ahead and starts his survey right now. The items approved, assuming that it makes the 67% threshold. If we get the survey back and it doesn't, then staff would bring the item back to you and let you know that it did not meet that 67% threshold.
But it might make it, suppose it makes it for 4 streets, but not for 8 streets.
My understanding from the way you explained the program and the way we've written it in the past is that it would be the 67% on the streets that hit that level. So the 4 streets would get it and the other 4 streets wouldn't. And we would report that back to you at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that your motion?
Yeah, that's my motion.
Okay. I'll second that. Okay. Any more discussion?
Yeah. So I'm sure I'm going to have a pretty unpopular opinion here, but I just don't feel comfortable deviating from processes that we've established. If we want to change processes, I understand that, but when you put a process in place and then you just obliterate it in one meeting, then why do you have it in the first place? So let's just get rid of the parking permit policy, and we'll just let residents come to the mic, and we'll make decisions on the fly. I definitely understand all the frustration that the residents have. I've mentioned numerous times that I've taken my... Excuse me, but you all had a chance to speak. I'm just trying to talk. I was very quiet, listened. I'm just trying to explain my position. I know it's not popular. I started with that, okay? But just let me explain. I've taken my 6-year-old and my 13-year-old into your neighborhood. We've spent numerous Saturdays picking up trash. I've spent a ton of time in Bennett Ranch. I've talked to a bunch of the neighbors, just like my colleagues have. I understand the frustration you're experiencing. I wouldn't want to have to deal with that either. But we have to be very careful about the fact that we have public streets that now we're going to essentially turn private. And we have to, in my mind, we have to abide by processes, because basically what we're doing is we're privatizing a neighborhood right now. Whenever you're putting permit parking in, that's what you're doing. And they're not asking to take over privatizing the street, paving it, taking care of it, maintaining it, any of that. The general taxpayers are going to do that. They just want to make sure that they're the only ones that can park there, right? If you want to make sure that there's no trash there, if you want to make sure that only the community that really cares, and I agree, neighbors that live in the community there are the ones that care the most. But if you want to make sure that they're the only ones that they don't have the trash problems, then let's just gate the neighborhood. Let's make sure that no one can walk on those public sidewalks. We'll make them private now, right? Let's privatize the entire neighborhood. We have a process that we've put in place. I think we need to follow it. I understand that it's just more delay. I get that, but we've put this process in place, and it doesn't make sense that we just obliterate it in one night. It's not that I don't sympathize, but I'm very process-oriented. When you put one in place, it should be followed. When you don't follow it, why have it in the first place? So
Yeah,
that's my opinion. But like I said, I
I
totally
struggle
get the frustration.
I struggle with this as well, and I agree with you. And yet, but that is what the council's for. I mean, we have a process, and how often do we change zonings? How often do we change a code? So, this is their opportunity to come to us and say, well, it's not working. Won't you, the council, consider changing it? So, I think, well, I agree with you 100%. We should follow a process. We shouldn't be so rigid. And this is the appeal. They've done everything. They've followed the processes. It's not working. They see that an exception should be made, and then that's kind of that's what we're here for, is to make exceptions when we see them. For the traffic, who else is traffic? Anybody else here from the Traffic Commission?
Jordan is watching on Facebook.
Oh, Jordan's watching on Facebook. Okay, just you two guys. This is, help us. Give us something that's so good the next time that people don't come with all these exceptions and we don't get this. I appreciate what you're saying. All right, then let's vote.
Wait, can you just one more time reread the substitute motion? And I'm sorry, City Manager, you have a question.
Yes, before, I'd like to just offer another suggestion. The second, or one of the recommended actions was that you actually send the policy to the commission to take a look at the threshold and so forth. So I'd still like to suggest that you consider that recommended action in your motion.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, for staff's clarification also, we mentioned it briefly, but not recently, the Sky Stella neighborhood, is that part
that was part of the amendment.
As a separate one, as a separate.
And that's again for the traffic in, so there's a situation in which the people living there have so many cars that our way of assessing that gives us a false positive. It looks like, it really doesn't have that situation, but in fact it does, because two homes are dramatically impacting. It's another exception to the rule. So anyway, yes, it's both.
So for clarity, I think we should do two motions. The first one has to do with the Bennett Ranch neighborhood and the Sky and
there are two separate
the
areas.
streets that have been identified. Sorry. And so the motion would be to approve the permit parking contingent upon the secret ballot portion of the policy taking place and the ballot results meeting the 67% threshold. So that would be the first one. And then I think you should do in a second. Why don't we take that?
Let's do that first.
Yeah, take that one. So that was Mayor Pro Tem Basil, seconded by Dr. Gardner, Mayor Gardner.
Okay, let's vote on that one.
That's separate. So we're going to vote on that one.
Yeah.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson opposed and Councilmember Voigts abstain.
And then the second motion would be what was in your staff report, to refer to the Traffic Commission a review of the policy as a whole.
Haven't we already done that?
We need a motion to accomplish that.
You do? Okay. All right, I'll make that motion. Okay. Let's vote on that.
That motion carries unanimously.
The item's been voted on. We finished the discussion on that
No,
item.
but it's not a bad, suppose if 100% of the people don't respond, we're looking at 67% of the responders?
It is, again, per the policy, a non-response is counted as a no vote in the process.
Okay, number 12.
Okay, number 12. It's 9:30. Don't we have to have a motion at 9:30 that says we're not so brain dead that we can go forward? Do you want to make that motion?
Make the motion that we continue.
Do we have a second? I'll second it. Obviously, the other three are brain dead. So.
You'll have to vote, yes.
What? Let's vote to continue. Did you vote to continue?
I didn't articulate that word.
There it is. That motion carries unanimously.
All right, item 12, discussion of ballot measure arguments. So do we have a report from the staff?
Yeah, just briefly. So as you know, there are three ballot measures scheduled for the November ballot. The deadline to submit arguments in support or opposed to the ballot measures is this Friday, August 10th. The council has the option to designate one of its members to write an argument in favor or in opposition to each of the measures. And if the legislative body, if the council does designate a member to write that argument will get priority for publication. And so you have the three ballot measures, and you need to make a decision as to whether or not you wanted to designate someone to write arguments.
Okay, do we have a speaker for that? Okay.
We do. Randy Johnson?
Okay.
Well, good evening, Council. Randy Johnson here. Mr. Robinson, I really appreciate that you try to protect the process, and you spoke your mind, and you had an unpopular position. But the fact is, is that you're not running for office. You're not pandering for votes, so you can do that sort of thing. You've got to think of the other people here, who are running for office. They have to protect their votes. Anyway, the reason I'm here is to talk about the ballot measures, and this is with regard to the district elections. And first of all, I'm very delighted that we have this opportunity tonight where I can speak to you, and we're talking about these arguments, putting them onto the voter's guide so that the voters can get educated in what's going on in this election, and that we're going to have probably one of you actually write the arguments, because I can't do it, because I spoke to a law firm about it, and they told me that if I did, I'd be at financial and legal liability if it was challenged. You folks wouldn't be, so I think you're the appropriate people to actually write the arguments. So I submitted a written statement here to you, and I think, first of all, I thank again, Councilman Robinson for actually introducing the motion to put this on the ballot. I really thank you for doing that, sir. You did a U-turn, and it took a lot of courage, and I appreciate it. I think you're the appropriate one who would be the one who would actually write the argument for the yes on Measure 2. And I submitted this some written arguments, some examples here that's very important to put on the ballot, showing that with the citywide elections, we have 5 council votes, 3 or 2 votes every 2 years, whereas with district elections, we only have 1 council vote every 4 years. That's it. And so we lose 4 votes, or 80% of our voting power. Citywide elections make 5 council members accountable to each and every voter. In district elections, council members still make big decisions that impact 100% of our city, but are only accountable to 20% of the voters. One attorney accused Lake Forest of discriminatory election practices against Latinos and being a racially polarized voting community. This prompted a threat of a lawsuit. Lake Forest hired an expert demographer to investigate. He concluded that we are not a racially polarized community. That should be in the voter's guide for the voters to see. That they should know that when they vote. Also, the only Hispanic candidate, the only one we've had in the history of Lake Forest, only received 23% of the Hispanic vote, according to the demographer's report. 77% of the Latino vote went to non-Latino candidates. So what does that tell you? Are district elections going to make a difference? No, of course they aren't, because the Latinos are voting for people other than Latinos. Kathy McCullough, black female, of course, served 20 years, and she was voted 4 or 5 terms. 2% of Lake Forest is African American. How could anybody call that racially discriminating? And also, so please read this. There's a lot of good information there. Please incorporate this in your argument for us, Mr. Robinson. I know you'll be honest. We can trust you. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, by the way, sends these things in early to us so we get a chance to read them, so we don't have to reread them. And again, I recommend that to anybody who wants us to read what they're saying, to please do that. Okay, so we have three ballots, statements.
Measures.
One is for term limits. One is what I'll call the non-binding, and one is the binding. Does somebody on the council want to do any of those things, for or against?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I'd like to do the 4 term limits.
4 term limits, all right. Does anybody else want to do 4 term limits? Oh, you're seconding it? Okay, okay. Well, I was just going to see if anybody else wanted to do it before we did it. Nobody else? All right, you seconded it. So should we vote on that? Okay. So we'll vote to assign the Mayor Pro Tem to write the in favor argument for term limits. Okay. You can go read. Didn't I do a term limits thing as
You
a
did.
citizen?
I have a copy of it.
Oh, do you have a copy of it? Yeah. Did I get sued?
No, you didn't.
Is the DA investigating me?
I don't know.
Okay. Anybody want to write against term limits? Anybody want to do that? No. So we'll leave that open to the public? Okay. That's a procedure. So if people are interested in doing the ballot argument against term limits, then they should get in touch with the city clerk, Jay Connolly at lakeforestca.gov, right? And do that pretty soon, because it's by Friday.
Yes, sir. Everything is due Friday by 5.
And what does it have to be, 200 words?
300 words.
300 words?
It has to be at least 300 or
No,
no
maximum.
more
I'm
no
sorry.
more than okay.
Maximum.
What happens if no one submits?
It appears in the ballot that no argument was submitted. Or not on the ballot, I'm sorry, in the voter guide that no argument was submitted.
Yeah, that's possible. All right, then the non-binding resolution, which kind of says something like, if at some time in the future this issue gets defeated, that the council should consider going back to the way we normally did things. Is that more or less the right? That's a non-binding. Does anybody want to write the argument in favor of that? Does anybody want to write the argument against that? Okay.
I don't have any more time. I would write more.
You're on the plane. Come on, you got a lot of time on the plane. She's leaving tomorrow for somewhere. I don't know. The binding one that says we should spend ourselves into bankruptcy because, God forbid, no matter what happens, we don't want districts. Isn't that it? Unlimited spending to oppose districts, no matter whether he wins every case he ever did. Okay. Does anybody want to write the in favor? I think you volunteered for that by Mr. Johnson.
You know, when I proposed that item, and I think it passed 4-1, but if I remember correctly. But
yeah, no, I voted against it.
I explained that I probably wouldn't vote for the item itself. I just felt like enough residents had reached out to me saying they wanted to see it on the ballot. My comment the entire time, and it really hasn't changed, has been that I don't like district elections, but I don't want to spend millions of dollars fighting it, potentially. I know that that's who knows how much we might end up having to spend, but I think it would be, I appreciate the volunteering of me, but I think it would be disingenuous of me to write it because I don't think that I would write it in a fair way. So,
all right. Well, I will volunteer myself to write the argument against it. And if anybody else
Against it or for it? I'm confused.
against spending ourselves into unlimited amounts of money to fight it, even if it hasn't been defeated. So I'm going to say, don't vote for that.
Against the binding measure.
Against the binding measure, yeah.
I'll write the article supporting it if Mr. Johnson won't mind if I take his words.
I'll second that then.
All right, then Colonel Cagley's going to vote in favor, and I'm going to vote to write the in favor, and I'm going to do the against. That's the motion. Or do you want two motions? That's the motion. Let's vote.
I'm so sorry. I still had you out. Can we revote very quickly? I apologize. That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, and then, so there are two opportunities, and anybody who wants to write either against term limits, or actually three opportunities, or for or against the non-binding, needs to get in touch with the city clerk as soon as possible, so you can get 300 words in by Friday. No, nobody wants to do the binding from the council, so it's open.
That was the binding.
That was.
Nobody wants to do the non-binding.
You had no takers on the advisory motion.
No. Tom and I binding.
Okay.
You for term limits, and the other three are vacant. You want to do one?
No, well, the non-binding, the one that if a city is able to defeat it, it's unconstitutional. That one's on the ballot too.
It is on
They're
the ballot.
all on the ballot. Now we're talking about...
That's the non-binding one, because that comes back to us. Is that one...
Correct. So all three measures are on the ballot. The term limit measure, Mayor Pro Tem Basil is going to write in support of. The advisory one, nobody was interested in writing in support or against. The binding term limit, or I'm sorry, district election one, Dr. Gardner, Mayor Gardner's writing, and Councilmember Cagley are writing on.
So you got three shots. You want something?
Well, I made the motion because my non-binding one is where if it's seen unconstitutional, I want the city to be out.
Do you want to write? Do you
Right.
want to
So
write
the
the
question is,
argument
do you
for?
want? Right. So are you volunteering to write the argument for? So then I believe we need a motion to that effect.
Okay.
I think that people are going to be shocked this year to find that some 2/3 or 2/5 of
Can
the city...
save the argument for your
But
paper.
are going to be shocked. They're not going to vote.
Okay, so it's a... Okay, I'll second it. The motion from Scott is to do the in favor of non-binding, and I second it. Now we're voting.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item number 13, City Manager Employment Agreement. We have a report on that?
I do. I have a brief report. So the council has conducted the city manager's evaluation and has negotiated a revision to the contract to include an annual deferred compensation payment on the city manager's behalf in the amount of $9,200 annually. All other terms and conditions remain the same.
Okay, thank you. Any public comments?
No, Your Honor.
Facebook
I'll
Live?
move the item.
Comments? You move the item. Do we have a second? Okay, before we vote, no, did you have something you wanted to say? Oh, go ahead.
So I just want to say from a performance standpoint, I've been very pleased with what the city manager has done in her tenure here. I don't recall that I've ever voted for any sort of pay increase for our current or our previous city manager, so I'm opposed to this. I'm not opposed to City Manager Rose in any way, but I've always been supportive of performance bonuses and not pay increases, so just to stay consistent, I'm voting no on this item, but I don't want it to be misconstrued that I think that she's not doing an adequate job. I think that she's doing a great job for the city of Lake Forest, and I appreciate all of her efforts.
Didn't you vote for all kinds of extra money for the former city manager?
Like I said, I've never voted for pay increases, but I've voted for bonuses.
Oh, for bonuses.
So, but I've never voted for pay increases. Those are annual recurring, whereas bonuses are one-time money in 1 year. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, so I voted against the increased compensation for the former city manager, I think twice. So I voted in favor for Deborah. Deborah has done an incredible job. If we had an hour, I could spend the next hour telling you all the things she's done. But most incredible is that she's put up with me, for which she deserves $9,000 just by itself.
I think she's agreeing.
She says, I thought it was too cheap. No, you've done an outstanding job. You've taken the city farther than it's ever been taken before. We are doing things that no other city does. Other cities are calling us and saying, how did you do that? I go to meetings and they say, how did economic development, how do you do all those things that you're doing? The same thing, the communications people, they're getting invited to go all over the country because they're state-of-the-art stuff. Our police department, chief is not here tonight. He's never worked so hard giving us data on look at this, look at that, we're doing this, we're doing that way. I mean, it's incredible how far we've come in the brief period of time that you've been here, and I could just go on and on and on. And, she came from a very traditional, we've never done that before, quotes, end quote, environment, and I know the staff are tickled pink. You're letting them do things that they've never done before, that they'll probably leave us and get better salaries somewhere else, so that's the downside. But the staff are happy with her, the council's happy with her. Like everybody, she stumbles here and there, but it's remarkable how well you've done, and not just put up with me, but the council, that sometimes we don't get along with each other, and she's been a neutral Switzerland, so bravo to you, and I look forward to voting for you again next year to give you a continued bonus. With that commercial announcement, I will call for the vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson opposed.
Okay, moving along now to Animal Care Services update. Sure. Did you have a...
This is just an update, correct, on the letter that came in?
Yeah, but we're going to vote on stuff to do.
I'd like to postpone the vote for that because I actually have heard mixed reviews of Orange County Animal Care, and I want to do some more research on that. If we could, just for the time, maybe put it off to the...
Well, I'd rather not postpone it, and because there are some things we're doing there that have nothing to do with Orange County Animal Care. So,
I've heard mixed reviews of what's going on up there, so and I haven't had time to follow up.
Well, and in essence, we're going to decide tonight whether we want to open negotiations with Irvine or Mission Viejo, and I think it's just opening negotiations. So if we find out in September that they're doing the most terrific job ever in the world, we don't have to go ahead with the negotiation. So we don't, and wouldn't it be great if they're doing such a great job?
I don't know. I've heard mixed reviews.
Yeah, so this doesn't bind us to anything. This just moves us along in the process. So did you have a report? Go ahead.
Yes, we have a report from Carlo Tamaino.
All right, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council.
Time's up.
All right, that's it. No, I only have a 2-hour presentation, so it should take no time. So a few months ago, the City Council gave us some direction in 4 different areas: to explore partnerships with other cities that provide animal care services, to explore a potential joint partnership with Costa Mesa and San Juan Capistrano, to explore a local program, and to communicate with OCC regarding certain leadership and oversight duties. Related to the first item, we've discussed with all the cities what a partnership might look like, and have ended up with interest from the city of Irvine and the city of Mission Viejo. As you know, probably the city of Irvine is actually in preliminary stages to build a new animal shelter. They're going to build it on the same site. They plan to issue an RFP for design within the next 12 months, but it's probably about 3 years out before they build their shelter. The city of Mission Viejo has a shelter, and both cities are interested in exploring opportunities, which would basically mean that we would provide them with some data, talk to them about what the program would look like, what the level of service would be, what services they would provide to us, and they would have to give us some hard cost estimates so that we understand realistically what that would cost, and we would bring that back to you if that's your direction. Relative to the second item, we did talk to Costa Mesa, and we did talk to San Juan. San Juan declined the invitation for a joint partnership. Relative to the third item, which is exploring a local animal care shelter, we prepared a draft RFP if your direction is to move toward a local shelter. However, we do feel that if we're exploring partnerships with neighboring cities, that it makes the most sense to work with them first, determine that those are possibilities or not based on your direction, and then look at a local animal care program using the RFP that we develop at a future time. And then relative to the fourth item, we've been in communication with Dylan Wright, who's the director of Orange County Animal, the program, and have sent him some correspondence on a potential animal care oversight committee. Mr. Wright responded by saying that we should make that request formally to Lisa Bartlett in the Orange County Board of Supervisors. So before you this evening are a couple of recommended actions, including sending letters to the city of Irvine, the city of Mission Viejo, if you wish to move in that direction and explore a potential partnership. We recommend deferring, for now, the RFP on the local animal care program, and we also recommend sending a letter to Supervisor Bartlett to request that the Orange County Supervisors consider the creation of an animal care oversight commission. So that concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any public questions, comments?
Yes, Your Honor. Sherry Anderson, followed by Randy Johnson.
Welcome.
Thank you. It is so cold in here. Cost, you talk about cost. We don't even know what Orange County is charging us. They just raise anything. So to talk about cost, I think, is kind of funny. As far as what's going on at Orange County, they're still giving away animals. And I'd like to tell you about Precious Cargo, who's now on Facebook and has broken a lot of hearts. Precious Cargo was a pup that was given away, Orange County Shelter, their giveaway, just 3 weeks ago. He was recently thrown out of a truck by 2 men. A rescue went to pick him up. They had to pick him up literally because he couldn't walk. Took him to the vet, or she, I should say, her vagina. She had been spayed. Her vagina was swollen, and they assumed, just what you're thinking now, that she was abused in that way. They tried to save her. She died. They did an autopsy. Her heart, her aorta was damaged, probably from abuse. So, you know, rescues go out. They do applications. They meet with people. My 4 fosters were just adopted this last week. Wonderful families, fighting for them and paying $150 per kitten. And they're happy to do so and thrilled to do so to support the shelter. They're spayed, they're neutered, they're vaccinated. Orange County just gives them away, and this is what happens. What kind of abuse did this poor animal go through in 3 weeks' time that they just give them away? So much for Orange County. The other, you talk about having a group, a welfare group. I think that's a great idea. I support that. I just want to make sure that the members are actually animal welfare people. Most of our commissions in the city, people get positions because of political reasons. Their husband was the chairman of the GOP. They say they'll vote for anything that you want them to do. So please make sure they are welfare people, animal welfare people. They're involved with rescue, fosters. There's all kinds of qualifications where they actually have worked with the animals. And I also support, you were just talking about something that sounds great. Oh, working with the other cities and seeing what we can do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Randy Johnson?
Welcome back.
Yes, well, my heartfelt gratitude to Councilman Cagley. Sir, my heartfelt gratitude. Thank you so much. You're a real trooper. Okay, with regard to Orange County Animal Care, you know that I did a lot of research on this. I stood before you folks, I don't know, at least 3 of you, many, many times trying to get a divorce from Orange County Animal Care. We weren't successful, okay? What I don't understand about this is we've locked ourselves into a 10-year contract. Have you taken the time to read the contract? Do you know the penalties involved? Okay, we've already spent $600,000, just to join the club. And if we pull out of Orange County Animal Care, we're going to have to pay a boatload of money, financial damages to the other cities. In fact, if you've read the contract. So I don't know why we're spinning our wheels, and I don't know why you're making the staff do all this work when you haven't even looked at the contract and don't know what's in it. I gave you all these facts, folks, 2 years ago. You never discussed it up in the dais. Not one of you, of the 3 of you, not one of you actually discussed the contract. Okay? We're locked into this baby. The train has left the station. And there's no way out now. What are you going to do? Are you going to pay Mission Viejo and Orange County Animal Care for animal services at the same time? This is crazy. Would you please think and don't put the cart before the horse? And don't make these people over here do all this work for nothing? Lake Forest or Mission Viejo is probably thinking the same thing I'm thinking right now. They can't get out of this contract. So I don't know why you're doing this. Also, licenses for cats. I talked about this too. Now we have a cat house in Lake Forest. 100 cats out there, okay? Why don't we license the cats finally? Maybe we can prevent some of these things from happening. How much is this costing the city for all these cats? What is it, $50,000 or something like that? When are you going to follow my advice? Go up and talk to LA County about it. They have a cat licensing program. It works great. And you say, well, we can't do that because we'll have to pay for every license that we get. Well, we have to do the same thing for dogs. And you hired a dog license canvasser to go out and do exactly that. So you're giving away money with more dog licenses, but at the other side of your mouth we say we can't do it for cats. Cats are animals too. They spread disease. We could actually be humane for the cats. Get them vaccinated. Get them healthy. Then people would have to be responsible for their animals. If we're going to be innovators and we're going to be catalysts, okay, and examples to the rest of the county, why don't we talk about licensing cats? It's about time.
Time's up.
And Randy, it's over 650,000.
Anything from Facebook?
Yes, sir, we have one.
Okay.
Rose Tingle, comment to council. I am commenting as a representative of the Citizens for Animal Shelter Orange County regarding the mayor's letter of August 8, 2018 to Supervisor Bartlett about establishing an animal care oversight committee. Rather than stating encourages OCAC, I am respectfully requesting the City Council be more direct. Members of the public, knowledgeable animal advocates have been requesting oversight since 2014. Members of the public must be included in any animal care oversight committee to enable collaboration with county shelter officials and assure information is passed down to constituents and city council members of the contract cities. The current committees, such as Shelter Community Outreach and City Managers Association Animal Care Committee, do not allow collaboration, and in the case of the City Managers Committee, the public is banned from the meetings. The current City Managers Committee members are not equipped to collaborate on animal welfare issues. Other cities and counties currently have animal care oversight committees. For example, the Pima Animal Care Center in Tucson, Arizona, has a citizen advisory committee with the mission, quote, to review and evaluate operations and policies of the Pima Animal Care Center to assure the center keeps pace with the most modern practices and procedures of animal welfare, period. Quote, Orange County CEO Frank Kim promised me at the groundbreaking ceremony that he would consider a committee. I would suggest Mr. Kim be copied on the letter to Bartlett. Regardless who Lake Forest contracts with for animal sheltering, an animal care oversight committee with members of the public must be established.
Okay, thank you. I guess it's not a question, just some good comments. All right, just to clarify something that maybe there's a misunderstanding, we're asking for a county-wide animal oversight committee in this letter to the supervisor, and copying Kim, I think, is a good idea. Separately from that, I established something called an Animal Welfare Subcommittee, which is a group of people from the city who I believe we're meeting again next week, right? Is it next week? 2 weeks? Okay, we met once, we're meeting again. That's a separate committee. It's not a commission. It's not founded under the Brown Act. It's not just a bunch of people sitting around talking about animal welfare in the city. Not unlike the Special Needs Committee that we set up a few months ago that does the same thing. Both of those committees are designed to look at those areas and to give us some input into how could the city do a better job in those areas. There's nothing binding about that. They're not an official committee of the city. The city has no obligation to listen to what they say, but it's a mechanism I set up in order to get input from people who are concerned in these areas. The animal welfare people are all animal people, if that's a word. It is a word. And the special needs people all have reasons to be concerned with special needs. But none of that's being done as an official part of the city format. By the way, it's probably not a bad time to bring this up. So that's, I'll bring it up later. Okay, during council comments. So we have 4 things on the menu. Send a letter to Irvine saying, let's dance. Send a letter to Mission Viejo saying, let's dance. Defer the local thing until we find out nobody wants to dance. And finally, to send the letter on the oversight, right? Okay. I'll move that we move forward on the letters.
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments?
My objection is that we've got a contract with Orange County Animal Care. We've got $650,000 invested in the new building, and it's the citizens that have paid. The fact is that I've heard mixed reviews. Like I said, I'd like to do more research and find out what's really going on up there before we start opening up, looking at an animal care contract with the city of Irvine or the city of Mission Viejo. Irvine is actually in the process of got a contract to build a new shelter with the same people who built the Orange County Animal Shelter. So the same people are building it. Irvine thought it was such a beautiful shelter that they've hired the same people to do their shelter. But the fact is, we're already fully invested in the shelter for the next 10 years. $650,000 of citizens' money went into that shelter. So I think that I will support a letter, and I will think that we should demand an animal care oversight committee. I think that that's the fair and responsible thing to do because we're invested in this, and I think that the amount of money that we have invested in this can't be reclaimed. The fact is, the penalties that were brought up by Mr. Randy are true. Plus the $650,000 that were already invested. We're supposed to be representing the people, and the fact is, this has already left, so let's work with them to make them better. And I support the Animal Care Oversight Committee, and that's just a horrifying story that was told to me by what they're doing in their desperation to get. The fact is, we have our own Lake Forest Animal Adoption Center. I think we need more of those out there so that we can get more animals in forever homes and get them out of the shelter and get them into these places where actually adoption specialists are working.
So did you want to amend the motion and include the oversight in with, because the original motion was just the two?
No, I'll make a substitute motion that we push forward with the Animal Care Oversight Committee.
As well as the two letters. Okay,
Well, I want to know more what's going on with Orange County, so I'm going to abstain.
Well, I don't. Oh, you're going to abstain. Okay. Well, since it's your vote that put us in this situation by contracting with the county, I understand your reluctance to have us move forward. But personally, I would like us to move forward and explore it.
I agree with moving forward and exploring, and, we may be locked into a contract, but it does take time to establish relationships and try to go a different route. So, I think it's wise for us to be inquiring, because if I had an opportunity today to get away from OCAC, I would absolutely take it, but I don't want to be fined millions of dollars or whatever the contract fees are, but I think it's not fair of us to not look to the future and try to make some plans for a later date. So I fully support doing investigation.
Yeah, and the city attorney has looked into the contract, by the way, for what that's worth.
Just briefly, can the staff just help refresh my memory? Have we reached out to Irvine and Mission Viejo previously when we've talked about this over the last few years?
Yes, we have, and their previous answer was no.
Okay.
More recently, though, their answer is we will look at it. I think with Mission Viejo, they have a process for adding cities, and the first step is their staff presents our letter to their council on their agenda to get authorization from their city council to start crunching numbers and so forth. So they ask for an initial approval at that point. Irvine doesn't really have a process. Our conversations were at the staff level, and so there's a new city manager now, and so we'll have to see what happens once we send that letter. I think Mission Viejo, there is a more established route. Irvine has never taken on a partner, so it's I'm less sure as what the process would be with them.
Sure. And, I don't have a problem reaching out. I just wanted to make sure that I refresh my memory correctly, because I did recall that we reached out to both of these cities, and specifically I remember Mission Viejo saying that we were too big. So I can understand how things may have changed from their perspective as they've absorbed, and their numbers maybe have changed based on different programs they have. So, I'm supportive of reaching out again, especially in light of the fact that our city attorney is reviewing the contract, and I know that there's language in there, but there's also wiggle room that the county can give us, and there's some cities that might want to be joining Orange County Animal Care that aren't currently a part of it, and then some that are interested in potentially disengaging, and so there's the potential for some sort of trade-off there. I know that's all part of discussions, may not happen, but it's right now this is just exploratory, and I've always said I want to make sure that we're providing the level of care that most Lake Forest residents would expect us to provide. There's going to be some that want us to provide more care than the average resident would want to potentially spend, but as long as we're providing as much care as at least the average resident wants at a rate that seems to be reasonable, that's where I've kind of been stuck the entire time, and I know that I usually get lumped into just being purely a hard-nosed numbers person who really doesn't care, and people constantly criticize me about it, but, I have 2 rescue dogs. I've always had rescue dogs, and, I've had dogs since the day I was born. And, I always find it personally offensive when people come up here and tell me that I don't care, but, it's just everyone's entitled to their opinion. I appreciate that, but I just don't find it to be an accurate representation of how I've lived my life. But if you feel that way, that's fine. So I'm supportive of these items tonight. And I have been supportive of these in the past. It's not insanity because facts have changed, right? So it's not that definition of insanity where we're asking the same thing and get the same result. Looks like maybe some facts have changed, so it's worth taking a look at again.
Yeah, I was told, perhaps I shouldn't say this, but I was told that the part of the decision from one of the other cities not to work with us had to do with the nature of the previous council. And they just didn't want to get involved. Well, you weren't told that. I was told that, so you're innocent. But the council has changed, and I think that's one of the reasons we're getting positive willingness to work with us. Things have changed. But again, it's my fondest wish that Orange County, I did some figures, they're doing better than they did in the past. It's my fondest wish for everybody in the county that they continue to do better. And at some point, we'll make a decision. They're doing so good, we'd be silly not to use them. Or maybe it's not as good as the other people. So, we're not committing tonight. We're just exploring, moving forward. So there are 3 things: the 2 letters and the oversight. Let's vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Voight abstained.
Okay. That brings us to City Manager report, and...
I have nothing further this evening.
Okay. Council comments. We'll start to my right with Councilman Robinson.
First, the issue that we were discussing earlier tonight about video, and if we could have staff and city attorney look into that, and whether a resident could put up video, we could potentially supply equipment, or maybe not. I'd like the staff to at least look at that. I don't know whether that needs consensus or not, if it's just a minor research issue, but, whatever you need, let me know.
I'll give you consensus on that, because it's the parks, it's crime, it's neighborhood watches, has such a high potential. I think that's be very valuable for us to pursue.
Yep. Secondly, my personal integrity is something very important to me. Again, I'm sure there's plenty of people that think that I don't have any. That's fine. I can understand that. But, for me, it's very important. At the last meeting, for most people, it probably went under the radar. They didn't even notice it. But I made a statement when we were talking about the Traffic and Parking Commission members who are being appointed, and I made a very definitive statement that I wasn't the first person who submitted a name, and the mayor actually corrected me, and I told him that he was wrong, and within just a matter of minutes, I started questioning whether or not I was accurate. And I reached out to the city clerk and asked her, and she said, yes, you were the first one. So I apologized privately via email to the council member shortly after that, and I mentioned that I'd do it publicly as well. So it's sometimes people think that I do things that are wrong, and I don't think that I did anything wrong. This one, I feel like I clearly provided some factual inaccuracies, and so I'm just going to apologize to my colleagues, and especially to the mayor, since he did correct me, and then I rebuffed his correction, and so it's. But that's all I have for the evening, and hope everyone has a good one.
Councilman Cagley?
Just 2 things. I've been thinking about this ever since Marcia Rudolph was our Director Control Officer. I think that we should put them and make that an agenda item when it's a non-council member is appointed to a commission or committee or something such as Mr. Holtzclaw. We do it for the school liaison. Let's put that on there as an agenda also, so you don't use up public comment time. They can be just on the agenda as being part of the city agenda. Yeah,
I'll second that. It's a good idea. you want to talk about the foundation?
I've got another thing I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about tonight, Jim, in the interest of time. I'll frame it for the next meeting.
Okay. Councilman Voights?
This Thursday, I attended a homeless summit roundtable at the Orange County Board of Realtors with Mayor Gardner, where we as cities are still struggling with where the homeless are going to be placed, what we're going to do about this, because it's a growing problem, and there are many of them that with a little bit of help can be brought off the street. I think that's our duty as a society to help those that are willing to be helped. And so I think it was a productive meeting. There was lots of us there. Me and the mayor were from Lake Forest were there. And I think there is hope that there will be the resources they need to have some emergency shelters, some transitional housing, and the fact is, along with the county and the state, some mental health facilities. And so it was a promising event. I went by the Lake Forest Sports Park tonight, and as it was cooling down, as I had to leave to come to City Hall, the children and families were coming out to see our bravest and finest at the Orange County, or the Lake Forest Sports Park with our deputies and with the volunteers that we have there. It was a good turnout for National Lights Out.
So I want to reiterate what Mayor said about our city manager, to give you some embarrassing moments. I've noticed over the last couple of months, it's like, when people are running, I see this with my son, and he goes into overdrive. He starts running, and then you start chasing him, and he speeds up, and he runs even faster. And I think if you guys are already running, and then we put something on you, and then you run even faster, and you surprise us, because you're not only keeping up with what we're asking you to do, but you're going even farther. I mean, twice in 1 week, I got to see Tom Wheeler outside of the office on the same road. With Saddleback Ranch Road, and looking over, see what we can do at the Millwood interchange, and then the poor tragic accident with the woman in the dump truck. I mean, you guys were so responsive. The residents. One thing you'll note about Portola Hills is we're really, really tight up there, and we have a really big Facebook page. You post something, you get 50 responses within minutes. It's crazy. And people were responding, how much they appreciated the staff, and your responsiveness, and really taking that situation seriously with the extra signage and everything else. I mean, it really makes a difference. And when people know that they're cared about, it actually helps with quality of life. I mean, we love the city in which we live, and you're helping us to love our city more. So I know it's your direction. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So last week, much to my surprise, I got an award from the Orange County Diversity Council for our work on the Diversity Spirit Achievement Award, and that was a compliment to me, but really to the city for the work that we've been doing in special needs, in that work there, the work we've been doing with affordable housing, the work we're trying to do with the homeless and are doing and will do better, the programs for the seniors. So they were very appreciative of our special needs dancers. People come from everywhere, all over the county, just to come here. And our special needs resource fairs, there's the incredible stuff we're doing, and they recognize that. So I got the award, but it's the award for the city for how much we're doing in that regard. And I'm glad the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned the service. For years, the city, how can I say this graciously? My wife says I need to be more gracious. I'm going to say this graciously. For years, the city had an acceptable level of service, but we're trying to talk about, whose city is this? This city belongs to the people, and our jobs, the council's job, the staff job, is to service you and to give you, efficient, effective services. So I'm glad to see he's out of his office out there working, or that the police chief is busy, much to his chagrin, counting data and reporting those kinds of things. trying to become more service-oriented so we can do a better job for everybody. And that's, again, thanks to her and her leadership, she's allowed that to happen. Anyhow, the cat is here to remind me that on Sunday at the Pet Adoption Center, they're having the Dream Rescue Adoption. And that's going to be from 12 to 4 at the Pet Adoption Center, which is in the Albertson Shopping Center on Muirlands. And there'll be plenty of cats, I think, including, if you watched the Mayor's Minute and you saw those 2 adorable cats that I'm fostering, one is named Princess and the other's Piano, they will be available. So, and this one will not be available. But please come down. As Mr. Johnson mentioned before he left, we have, 40 or 50 cats, more than we normally should have. And the rescue people and Pet Adoption Center and Dream Rescue have been trying to help out. So we need fosters, people to take them and civilize them and make them more dog-friendly, more kid-friendly, so that when the adoptee people come, they adopt them more easily. But even more importantly, we need adoption people. So I hope to see you all on Sunday from 12 to 4. Maybe even Mr. Johnson will be there. Who knows? So thank you very much for being with us. And I wanted to mention there's a ribbon cutting on Friday. It's at the Ocean Dental at 3:30. You can check all these things out on the city's website, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Night.